Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's time. I'd like to call into order the open session of the AISD Board of Trustees on August 21st at 7:07 p.m. I want to thank everyone for coming out to be with us this evening. We'll start our meeting with the opening ceremonies. Dr. Cavazos, please join Dr. Cavazos in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. This time, please silence all cell phones and electronic devices to avoid disruptions around you. And if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We were going to swap it, but we'll stick because Mr. Hill says presentation is going to be fast. So the first item on our agenda is program presentation, safety and security audit update. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, President Hogg, board members, and Dr. Cavazos. I'm here today to talk about the 2014 security audit from this past year, and just a little history about it. Senate Bill 11 established that this requirement happened in school districts back several years ago, and so we'll just get right into it. In this security audit or security plan, we must provide district employees with training on emergency instances that could take place on campuses. It mandates that school drills be prepared for students and employees to respond to emergencies. It provides for measures to ensure coordination with local first responders in the events that those emergencies happen. The audit, again, it must take place every 3 years on all district facilities. This shall follow the audit procedures that are developed by the Texas School Safety Center, and the results shall be presented to the board, and this is the reason that we're here today. Our last audit took place back in 2011, and some of the recommendations that came out of the audit were to encourage locked classrooms as a practice for all campuses when students are in class, and that has been complete. That's the focus on our campus each year. Implement a software system capable of running background checks on visitors. That's been complete. We have the Raptor system at each one of our facilities. Consider placing AEDs at other areas than the clinic in each one of the schools. And each one of our elementaries, we have 2, and there are several in the secondary campuses. And for the district to review the crisis manual and the emergency operations plan, that's done on an annual basis. The contractor that we used this year was Robert Bookout and Associates, along with some AISD select staff. Bookout and Associates, they have a pedigree of working really well with risk management, school emergency planning, school incident management, school security training, and they do tons of other K-12 security facilities in the audit process. Again, they work with the campus and the facility administrators from March of this past year all the way through May, and they compared our standards against, our facilities against a pre-established standard that was set by the Safety Center. One of the things that we also did, we did a lot of collaboration with APD, with first responders, and the Arlington Fire Department. Some of the commendations that were brought forth out of the audit were that all schools had phones in every classroom. That was a safety concern that they brought forward, a commendation that they brought forward. We do have two-way communications at our campuses. A lot of our campuses would say that we need more, but we were commended for having that. Raptor visitor management system is in use at every campus. The access controls and the keyless entry points for the campuses are there. Commended for that. Camera buzzer intercom systems at the elementary, that's commended for. And our drills are conducted on a regular basis and documented in a single repository. We're really commended for the involvement of the parents and the community in our schools. That was very evident as they went through the audit. Each audit comes with some recommendations, and so here's what this 2014 audit brought forward. Install or repair lighted exit signs over all exit doors, and that process is already being addressed through work orders. Ensure that playground monitors have two-way communication while outside monitoring students. Ensure that playground equipment has the last inspected dates clearly visible, and to continue to monitor those classroom doors that are locked when students are in class. Next steps for AISD. Again, we've already reviewed and prioritized these recommendations, and we're already in the process of addressing all of those. We'll continue to collaborate with APD and Arlington Fire Department and first responders on many tabletop exercises and prepared for any emergency that will come up. And we will continue to monitor those campus drills and require those on a monthly basis. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll. Questions from colleagues? Mr. Warwin, let me ask, when we monitor campus drill requirements, are those things then listed in that district scorecard or the campus scorecard that they'll be tracking so that we can monitor those things are being completed in their scorecard?
It's not a part of the scorecard, but it's something that we monitor every month.
Okay.
It's a part of
So we're still running the reports to
Yes.
make sure everything's being
That's correct.
within compliance and being accomplished.
That's correct.
Thank you. Ms. Mays?
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
One question I have is, since we're talking about security and you say the process, you've got collaboration with the Arlington Fire Department and Arlington Police Department. Do we also have collaboration with the Grand Prairie Police Department?
We do, in our tabletop exercises, we meet with all of the, anywhere that there's a AISD school, that precinct or that city has representation there. And so we even do a lot of collaboration with Mansfield. They're not in AISD, but we share borders, and so they are part of those tabletop exercises also.
Okay.
And normally on those, the two cities, usually if a school's
Yes.
having an issue, they'll all come, whoever's first available, correct?
They come running.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't have to, but they are prepared. Ms. Sultan, Ms. Mays, anything else?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
One more question. Okay, so we've prioritized the recommendations that were made. Since it looks like 3 of the 4 don't have to deal with anything tangible, when you say prioritize, they're still being done
Yes, they are.
currently.
Yes, they are.
Okay, some questions?
Thank you, Ms. Mays. Ms. Sullivan?
Just a quick question. Is there an expansion plan for keyless access keypads on the larger campuses to expand access?
That is one of the things that we consistently monitor, and principals do make us aware of, hey, we potentially need keyless access here or there, and so we do take those into consideration and work to try to get that done.
Thank you.
Dr. Reich?
I just have one recommendation, one comment, and the report's great. This is a compliance-driven report. In the future, in order to gain efficiencies within our organization, perhaps look at where we can have things tied from our safety and security standpoint out of our strategic plan measures with this compliance report, so that maybe it's something that we don't have to put so much, or you guys don't have to put so much extra work into, and it'll still be driven by our metrics and our goals with our strategic plan. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Any other comments? Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
Next, we'll consider administrative appointments. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. I'd like to recommend the board ratify the individuals discussed in closed session for the assistant principal for Johns Elementary, the assistant principal for Morton Elementary, and then appoint the individuals discussed in closed session for the principal of Arlington High School, principal of Lamar High School, assistant principal for Ferguson Junior High, and assistant principal for Short Elementary.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Solons and a second by Ms. Pena. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 7 trustees present, 7 trustees voting in the affirmative. Dr. Cavazos, please introduce.
Thank you, President Hogg, and at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the new principal of Arlington High School, Mr. Shavir Dalla. Shavir attended the University of Texas at Arlington, received his Bachelor of Science in Biology, attended University of North Texas in Denton, and received his Master of Education in Educational Administration. Most recently, the principal of Gunn Junior High School, has been an assistant principal at Arlington High School, and has been a chemistry teacher at Sam Houston High School. Shavir, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say? Anyone you'd like to introduce?
Thank you, Dr. Passos. President Hogg, members of the Board of Trustees, thank you for this opportunity. Arlington High is a special place, and for many of you on the board, you know how special it is. And I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to introduce my mom, Roxy Dalla, my dad, Nick Dalla. You know, Mr. Hill, when you're making that presentation, I had a 3-year-old, so I was like, I hope he means short. But Lanin's out in the hall, and that's my beautiful wife, Stephanie, and she is currently 6 months pregnant. And about a month ago, I asked her if she would support me in my goal to be the principal at Arlington High School, and she said yes, and she's always been supportive of me, and Steph wouldn't be here without you, so thank you. I'd like to thank Jason Davis and Sherman Perry and the rest of the admin team at Arlington High. Those of you that are familiar with them. Oh. Come here, buddy. Come here. I'm going to make a speech, okay? All right. You guys know that at high school they get prepared during the summer. Sorry, guys. They get prepared over this summer.
Don't be sorry, that face is priceless. I love it. I love it.
And so it takes a lot for this transition time, and I really do appreciate all of you. Thank you. To my family at Gunn Junior High School, it's been 2 quick, short years. But thank you. It's important to me that you guys know that I've learned more from you than I've taught y'all, so thank you so much. My junior high school principal team, what a fantastic group of leaders. Arlington ISD is blessed to have them. Special thanks to Andy Hagman, who's been my mentor for the past couple of years. I'm sorry, I'll go quick. Fernando and Tiffany Benavidez, I want to thank them, especially Tiffany, for telling my wife that it is possible to be married to a high school principal and have 2 small children, as y'all can see. And Jennifer Young for being a constant support, mentor, and friend for the past 6 years. Wouldn't be here without her. And finally, to my Arlington High School family, thank you for being here tonight. I really do appreciate the support, and I hope to continue the spirit, pride, and tradition of Arlington High. So, kick 'em Colts. Thank you all.
Other people have to stop a little child running
That's right,
up right
that's
now.
right.
Across us.
Before we introduce the next one, I'd like to take a moment to thank Sherman Perry for serving as interim principal there at Arlington High School. Thank you, Sherman. Next, I'd like to introduce the principal of Lamar High School, Mr. Andrew Hagman. Andy Hagman. Andy attended the University of Texas at Austin and received his Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics, attended University of Texas at Arlington to receive his Master of Education in Leadership and Policy Studies. Most recently, the principal at Shackelford Junior High School, has been an assistant principal at Lamar High School, an assistant principal at Venture, and has been a mathematics teacher at Venture. Andy, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say, anyone you'd like to introduce?
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. President Hogg, members of the board, I am very honored and humbled to stand before you today as the next principal at Lamar. It's truly wonderful to be here. I'd like to recognize my family who's here tonight, my wife Leah, my daughter Carson, son Brooks, and daughter Kendall. They are fantastic, and you know, the people who know me know that I spend my time at one of 2 places, with them or at school. And that's the 2 places I love to be. And so thank you for the support for all these years and for the years to come. You're the best. The past 5 years at Shackelford have been wonderful. We have grown together, and we have experienced success together. And I'm very proud of my time there. And I echo Shavir in saying that I've learned a lot from them, and I've taken more from it than I think I've imparted to them. So thank you, Shackelford Junior High, and for the North Arlington community for your trust and for your faith and for your relationships that we've had. Lamar High School has a very special place in my heart. I got to be there in 2008, and I fell in love with the school. And I got to know staff members and students and families, and I am thrilled at the opportunity to be with you again. And we are going to do wonderful things together. We'll grow together, and by any measure that you choose to utilize, we will be successful. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Before I go on to the next one, I'd like to take a moment to thank Juan Villarreal, the interim principal of Lamar High School. Thank you, Juan. Next, I'd like to introduce the new assistant principal of Ferguson Junior High School, Ms. Elena Lopez. Elena attended the University of North Texas in Denton, received her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, Texas A&M Commerce, Masters of Science in Counseling and Guidance. Most recently, an assistant principal at Crow Elementary, has been a counselor at Turning Point Elementary, has been a counselor in Irving, and an elementary teacher in Dallas ISD. Elena, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to begin by just thanking God for his unmerited favor and for blessing me beyond compare. Members of the board, President Bowie Hogg and Dr. Cavazos, it's an honor to be standing here before you to serve Arlington ISD and to be appointed as the new assistant principal for Ferguson Junior High. Dr. Wirtz, Dr. Haubrick, and Mrs. Williams, Wilmoth Sonato, thank you so much for your expertise, for sharing, for your leadership. I am looking forward to continuing to grow and learn from you. Throughout my educational career, individuals have been placed in my life who've been instrumental in my development as a leader, and I'd like to take an opportunity to thank these people. Irma Vega Zade, thank you for teaching me the importance of organization, preparedness, and presentation. And Grace Solomon, thank you for recruiting me 10 years ago. I wouldn't be standing here today if you hadn't given a rookie counselor an opportunity to work at an alternative school. And I'd like to also thank Mrs. Anelda Acosta. Thank you for your mentorship, your no-nonsense attitude, and for always doing what's in the best interest of students. You invested time into my development and allowed me to fly when I was ready, and thank you for that. To my children, Gary, Francesca, and Elijah, thank you for sharing your mom. I missed some open houses, meet the teacher nights, tennis and baseball matches, but you understood, and you never made me feel guilty. And to my husband, my best friend, my biggest fan, thank you for always believing in me and for loving me unconditionally. Love you, babe. And to my parents and in-laws, thank you for your encouragement and support. Crow faculty, I have had 3 glorious years with you. Thank you for the work that you do daily for students. I have enjoyed serving as your assistant principal. Mr. Zahn, Mr. Dunn, and the interviewing committee, thank you for selecting me and for your belief in my capabilities as a leader. To the faculty of Ferguson Junior High, I'm ready to serve you, and I am definitely ready for some football.
Next, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal of Johns Elementary School, Ms. Cheryl Murdoch. Cheryl attended Henderson State University, received her Bachelor of Science in Education, Texas Wesleyan University to obtain her Master's in Education. Most recently, a 5th and 6th grade teacher and specialist in Mansfield ISD, has been in Arlington ISD as a teacher at Thornton and at Blanton, and at Duncanville as a kinder teacher. Cheryl, congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you
anything
very
you'd like to
much.
say?
President Hogg, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, thank you so much for this opportunity. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to once again return to the Arlington ISD team. I totally appreciate it, and I feel very honored to be back. I feel like I'm back home in a way. I look forward to being an instructional leader and empowering the students of Johns Elementary. I look forward to working with the strategic plan and just empowering students to be all that they can be and to strive to be the best that they can be every day. I also want to thank Ms. Rogers for having confidence in me and the faculty at Johns Elementary for selecting me. My promise to them is that I will definitely do my best each and every day. I have here with me today my husband of 21 years, Marchie Murdoch, my sister, Leisha Burrows, and my lovely daughter, Malaysia Murdoch. I would be remiss in my duties as a mother if I did not mention thank you to my son, Marchie Murdoch, who is away at college at University of Illinois. Thank you so much. I promise to work hard for y'all.
Next, I'd like to introduce the Assistant Principal of Morton Elementary School, Ms. Ebony Key. Ebony attended Dillard University in New Orleans to obtain her Bachelor of Arts, Southern University at New Orleans to obtain her Master of Arts, most recently an English Language Arts teacher in Irving ISD, and has taught kinder at Dallas ISD and has taught English Language Arts in Houston ISD. Ebony, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos, President Hogg, the board, Dr. Cavazos. I'm at a loss for words. Thank you so much for providing me this opportunity to join Arlington ISD as the assistant principal at Morton Elementary. I look forward to joining this premier district and excelling. Today I have with me my husband, Damiano Key, and my son, Damiano Key II, a host of friends, and my Morton Elementary family. Thank you again for this opportunity. I look forward to working and serving the students of Arlington ISD and being a Morton Mustang.
Next, I'd like to introduce the Assistant Principal of Short Elementary School, Ms. Amy Delgado. Amy received her Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education and attended Texas Women's University for her Master's in Reading. Most recently, a campus instructional coach and language arts at Spear Elementary School, and has been a bilingual teacher at Spear Elementary School. Amy, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Yes. I have to thank President Hogg, the members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. I have to read because I'm kidding. Sorry. Just, I was practicing. I wasn't going to cry. Thank you for the opportunity for becoming a principal at assistant principal. I'm not taking your job. At Shore Elementary, I have with me the most amazing husband. He just came from work. And my friends who are making me cry, my awesome kids, and my Sphere family. I've been with them 14 years, so I'm a little emotional. I said I was gonna cry. Also, my parents are watching me from Puerto Rico, so I love them on FaceTime. And also my mentor, Selena Bastidas, for guiding me through this special process. And to my Spear family, I will never forget you. And thank you for being there for me always. And finally, which is a joke, to my new Short family, since I'm told, my Short family. I mean, I love them, and I know I will do my best, and I won't cry anymore. This is it. That's it. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce our new Director of Instructional Technology, Mr. Barry Fox. Barry attended Abilene Christian University and received his Bachelor of Music Education, and attended the same university for his Master of Science in Organizational and HR Development. Most recently, the Instructional Technology Director in Denton ISD, has been an Assistant Principal at Northwest ISD, an Assistant Principal at Carrollton Farmers Branch, and has also worked in Ector County ISD. Barry, congratulations, welcome. Anything you'd like to say?
President Hogg, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, thank you for this opportunity. After sitting here listening to some of these testimonies, I can tell I'm in the right place. Using an old phrase that you've heard, I wasn't born in Arlington ISD, but I got here as fast as I could. I am very excited to be here. My family's very excited. I'd like to take just a minute to say thank you. My in-laws, Leroy and Roxanne Brenforder, have traveled here from Lincoln, Nebraska to be a part of your, so.
Wow.
I challenge anyone that's traveled further to come talk to me afterwards. There's a prize, I hear. I would like to thank my 3-year-old daughter as well. Audrey Fox, and we have one also 6 months on the way, so we got to talk. So we're excited about growing our family here in the Arlington ISD family. And also my beautiful wife, Jennifer Fox, who I would not be here today without her support and her help, so thank you, I love you. I'd also like to thank Mr. Branham and an amazing instructional technology department that is here, and I am so honored that you've selected me and you've put your faith to help me lead this team. They are an incredible team. They truly exemplify the slogan, Achieve Today, Excel Tomorrow, because they have done amazing things, and I am honored to work with them moving forward. So thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on Monday, and I appreciate your support and your faith in me. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce our Director of Purchasing, Ms. Tammy Craig. Tammy attended Sam Houston State University and received her Bachelor's of Business Administration Management. Most recently has been in Denton ISD, has also spent a large amount of time in Arlington ISD as a buyer, has worked in Jasper ISD, Temple, has worked in Temple Inland Forest Productions, and numerous other posts. And Tammy, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Yes, thank you, President Hogg, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to say that I was at Denton for about 3 months, and Arlington's home. I moved up here from Deep East Texas, in case you don't pick up the accent. I'm trying. Anyway, so when I moved up here 3 years ago, it's hard to even go back. I love it. I consider myself, I'm a North Texas girl now, and Arlington's home for me, and I am glad to be back. So thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with Arlington ISD, all the departments, and the students, the teachers, everyone. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
We had Lincoln, Nebraska. We had Puerto Rico watching. We had a son at Illinois, and about the cutest batch of kids I've ever seen running out there. We even had one made an appearance during the speech. And this little one right behind that one, I can't, he's cute kids. So congratulations to all of you. As is our custom, we ask our appointees, please follow Mr. Kale as you go out in the hall. We'd like to have a receiving line so all the board can officially welcome you to your new positions. And those of you new to the district, welcome to the district. We will take a brief break. We'll be back at approximately 7:50. I'll now call back to order the meeting of the AISD Board of Trustees at 7:58 p.m. Next, we'll go to public hearing. We have no public hearing tonight. We'll move on to open forum for agenda items. I don't see any cards. Mr. Benjamin, is that correct? Thank you much. Next, we'll move to action item. Action item B, consider ordinance of number 134, setting the 2014 tax rate. Do we hear a motion? Do we want a presentation? We love a presentation. Ms. Powell, we always love presentations.
And there's good news to share with this. So, all right, if we can get the tax rate PowerPoint up. And while he's loading that, I will share that on June the 26th, the board adopted the 2014-2015 operating budget and the entire official budget. And on that same night, we also had a public hearing about the budget and the proposed tax rate. We now have our certified property values from Tarrant Appraisal District, so we can take the last step of the budget process for the 14-15 year and adopt our tax rate. So Tarrant Appraisal District did release the certified values on July 25th, and they are a little bit better, a little higher than what we had anticipated when we worked on the proposed budget and presented that to the board in June. So the certified values came in at $21.8 billion. It's $21,763,346,968. So they're 5.2% higher than last year's certified values, and we had estimated that the rates would be up about 3.2%, and so they're actually up 5.2%. So that's definitely an improvement. Of the total growth over last year, only about a little less than 9% of that is from new construction, so most of this growth is actually from revaluations. We are proposing that the board adopt a tax rate of $1.34811. That is actually about a penny less, a little over a penny less than the rate we anticipated that we would need to adopt when we presented the proposed budget to you all in June. So like I said, we've got some good news here. The impact on the budget. These higher property values, along with a certification of last year's property values by the Comptroller's Office, those are the values that are actually used in the state funding formulas, result in additional revenue totaling $5 million in the general fund. So that is very good news. If the board adopts the rate as proposed, we will have an operating surplus in the general fund of $6 million. When we presented the budget to you all in June, we indicated that we would have an operating surplus of just under $1 million. And of course, we all remember that we are using surplus fund balance to build a new elementary school, so after you subtract off the use of that surplus fund balance money, we'll actually, on our financial statements, the bottom line will be a negative amount, but again, it is that is simply because we're using surplus fund balance to build an entire elementary school. So the projected ending fund balance will be $156 million. In the debt service fund, what the higher values mean is that we're actually able to set our debt service rate at about a penny less than we anticipated we would need to service our debt for the upcoming year. The other thing that's helped us out a little bit is the same night that the board adopted the budget on June 26th, we also ordered a bond sale that night. And so the proposed budget we gave you all that night made some assumptions about what the interest rates were going to be on that debt, and our rates actually came in a tick less than we anticipated. So the payments that we owe this upcoming year on that the new bonded debt is less than we had anticipated. So the combination of the higher property values and the slightly less debt service payments due in this year mean that we can set the debt service rate at 30.8 cents, and we had originally thought that it would be 31.8 cents. So the impact on the debt service fund is simply with the rate itself. We'll actually need to generate about $257,000 less in funding because of the debt payments that we'll owe this upcoming year are less. So the next steps are that the board will adopt the tax rate for the 14th year, and again, the total rate that we're asking the board to consider is $1.34811. And so with this action, if you approve it, we'll also amend the budgets in the debt service fund and the general operating fund to reflect the changes generated by the tax rate. This is the motion language that we have to enter. The state law is very prescriptive about the motion you make when you adopt a tax rate. What this actually indicates is that we have an effective increase in our tax rate of 8.56 cents. Now, the effective rate is the rate, the increase that is generated by raising or back up here. It's equal to last year's tax revenue divided by this year's values on properties that were also on last year's tax roll, so that it's a little complex in there. But effectively, it's about an 8.56 percent increase in the tax rate. So when you all make a motion, it's got to be exactly this language that we have to enter. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from colleagues? Ms.
Mr.
Pena?
Nope, sorry.
Let's take one quick question, Mr. Hibbs. Ms. Pena?
Were the drummers?
You know, I let them stay home.
Good question, Ms. Pena, good question.
And wish they were here.
Where are the drummers? Ms. Powell put on a presentation to the entire 4,000 teachers and staff, and Ms. Powell decided to use drummers.
It was a diversion.
You always worry when your CFO is using diversions, but it was a good one. It was a very.
It's all about the
visual. A motivating.
Sure, yeah.
Let's not use the word diversion there. At this time, Mr. Hibbs.
President Hogg, concerning action item A, motion to adopt the 2014 tax rate, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $1.34811, which is effectively an 8.65% increase in the tax rate.
8.56.
8.56% increase in the tax rate.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hibbs and a second by Ms. Solons. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 7 trustees present, 7 trustees voting in the affirmative. Ms. Powell, we've officially set the tax rate.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Drummers are always welcome during presentations, Ms. Powell. Next, we'll move on to discussion action item. Consider 2014-2015 district scorecard targets. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And this evening, we'd like to visit with the board about our district scorecard, our 2014-15 proposed district scorecard. There's work that's been done with this, with our accountability department, with our area superintendents, with our curriculum department, with some principal input as well. And at this time, Michael Hill will introduce the presentation. As a reminder, we hold ourselves more accountable than our state standards. This is beyond compliance. It is actually a district standard, so this is unique to us. And we've put in some metrics that we feel will help us achieve the goals that we're striving for. So this time, Mr. Hill.
Again, good evening, President Hogg, Board, and Dr. Cavazos. Just a little bit about the overview of kind of how we landed here. And so there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. Collaboration with Studer at the top of it, or side by side with AISD and the senior staff, area superintendents, lots of input from principals, lots of input from the CNI department about how we get to the point where we are tonight to present these goals for the scorecard. And so I want to turn it over now to Dr. Kathy Link, who will take us through a portion of it, and then she'll go with Dr. Stephen Wirtz with the next part. So here's just kind of a culmination of all the work that's gone into it. So thank you.
And before Dr. Link presents, I would like to add, you can come up, Kathy, but I would like to add that this is our second year. We've had 1 year with the district scorecard, and so a lot of the focus was to align it and clarify it for staff so it can truly cascade in the organization. Dr. Link is our interim accountability and testing executive director. So, Dr. Link, welcome.
Good evening, President Hogg, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos. I'm going to start with an overview of what the scorecard looks like. This is the big picture of the main goals that the district proposes that are the top priorities. It doesn't include everything that the district does, but just the most pressing issues we have. The scorecard includes student achievement, We have the people, services, finances, and quality indicators, and we'll go into a little bit more depth on those. In student achievement, we have 6 main goals. These are the first 3. We're dealing with the on-track to graduation for all students, the on-track to graduation for our K through 2 students. That's a big initiative for us, and that the district at all campuses will receive a Met Standard rating. The last 3 goals on student achievement deal with advanced academics, which is a big push for the district. We want to increase the participation of students in advanced academics, increase the composite of juniors meeting college readiness standards, and increase the participation rate of students taking the certification examination. On this other survey measures besides student achievement, we have people, and we want to increase the district mean on the employee engagement survey, which pretty much measures the satisfaction of our employees. For services, increase the district mean on the parent satisfaction survey. We want to include our parents and how we're doing. And increase the district mean on the district services survey. That's how different departments are functioning across the district. Finance, maintain the scheduled progress on the bond projects. Propose plans for strategic investments of available funds. And propose balanced budget while meeting the needs of the strategic plan. Quality indicators, the last column on the scorecard are the quality indicators, and what those are, where other departments in the district look at the district goals and decide how they can help best meet those goals. And those would be done in their specific plans. A little bit of that Elaine Say is going to address later. And now Dr. Wirtz will go a little bit more in depth with the criteria to on track to graduate on time.
Good evening, President Hogg, School Board, and Dr. Cavazos. As you know, the scorecard is really designed for us to really track some specific things that are going to help us reach our goals. And one of our goals here in our strategic plan is for 100% of our students to graduate on time. So as a team, we developed a criteria or a metrics to really help us identify some key points or key criteria that will help us monitor different aspects of students' learning and progress to see if they're going to be considered on track so that we can intervene when we need to. So I'm here tonight primarily to share with you some of the changes that we've done in order to make sure that we're increasing our standards so that they're rigorous for students, and also to ensure that they are prepared for state standards as they roll in. So I'm going to use this just to kind of direct you to some certain things as I'm talking. The first point that we want to demonstrate is here. The areas in red are some of the areas that we've changed, and what we're measuring here in our primary grades K through 2 are the skill-based report cards. So here we're tracking students' mastery of content specifically identified out in the report card. And in order for a student to reach mastery of those skills, we measure them on a range of 1, 2, 3, or 4, and 3 is considered on grade level. And we're looking to see that at least 70% of standards that are measured, the students are reaching grade level targets. We also made a couple of changes with regards to our standardized assessment. In reading in kindergarten, we measure students' progress using the DRA. We look to make sure they're reading at grade level targets, and it's important to note that the DRA is an assessment that is normed across the country. It's used by students all across the country. And we are raising the standard in kindergarten to 4, level 4, where it used to be a 3. We're also adding in second grade the use of the DRA and EDL. EDL is simply the DRA test for bilingual students who are being tested in Spanish. We're going to start using that next year. In the past, we've used ITBS, which is a nationally normed reference assessment. It allows us to measure how our second graders are performing compared to their peers of the same age group across the country. And we will still use that assessment. We're just not going to include it as part of the on-track. We're going to use it as a measure to kind of compare the two data points. Simply because if you'll notice here, our goal is to monitor students' progress from kinder all the way through 12th grade. And so we're trying to align the data points that we're using, so we're comparing apples to apples. So here now we can track a student from kindergarten if they reach grade level target of a 4. When they go to first grade, a 16 nonfiction. And then when they get to second grade, we're going to continue to look at DRA to make sure they're meeting standards of 28 nonfiction on their reading levels. Another reason why this is important is because what we found is that there's a correlation between students who are reaching a 28 nonfiction and their actual outcome on the STAR assessment, the state assessment. It could be used as a predictor to get an idea about their ability to actually pass that state reading exam. Another change that we've implemented here is math. In kindergarten and in first grade, we've increased the DMA standard, which is a locally developed assessment that we do, which is almost equivalent to DRA in some ways, where we're looking at a specific strand of mathematics and we're monitoring students' mastery of that strand. We're looking for 80% mastery in kinder, first, and second grade. And then the final change that we've updated is our Phase 2, Level 2 standard. In the state accountability system, there are multiple phases, and up until today, we received notice actually last night, they have 3 phases. Phase 1, which is what we were in last year. Phase 2, which is what we were supposed to start this year, which is not going to happen. They're going to continue in Phase 1. And then Phase 3 is the final recommended phase. Well, in anticipation for the district, in order for us to be proactive and make sure that our students are really prepared for that phase once it arrives, we have increased our targets for the standardized assessment. So when students take their STAR exam, we're going to be monitoring their actual outcomes compared to that second phase, and we're going to start that beginning this year. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what that will look like, just to give some clarity. So here you'll see an example of what we call a raw score conversion table, which the state provides for each of the assessments that they offer the students. This is an example of third grade mathematics, and what you see right here is the raw score, which is simply the number of questions that are offered on the exam. Next to it is a scale score, which is a statistical score that the state releases based upon a student's level of performance, and it's a way for them to measure a student's progress from one year to the next. So once in a while, you'll see the scale score compared to the question go up and down a little bit, simply because it's a statistical analysis the state uses to measure from year to year. So here, for example, you have the number of questions, and then you have the scale score. Next to it, what you see is bars that indicate the way the phases are being phased in over the course of the last several years. And right here, we're in phase 1. And the green represents the area where if a student reaches this level of achievement, they would be considered not passing or meeting standard. The blue area is the passing standard, and the red area is considered advanced. And I guess the most layman's way to think about advanced is in terms of commended in the past, kids who scored a commended rate. The reason why this is significant and important when you think of our on track to graduation phase 2 and even our scorecard data that Dr. Link was sharing is because right now we're sitting here in phase 1, and students who are currently passing, let's say for example with 29 questions correct, at a 1411 scale score, they would be considered passing at phase 1. But if they maintained the same level of achievement or even increased it by 2 or 3 questions, in the next phase, they would be considered not passing or not meeting standard. And so our task at hand is how do we intentionally work with students to increase the rate of their progress so that when the next phase hits, they're able to master content and demonstrate it on STAR within the next range. Another important thing that I think is to note about the way the state is changing the phases, it's almost as if they're articulating that passing is no longer acceptable. We're really looking for students to master content, which I think is a commendable thing. But what you'll notice is that the range for passing and the difference between what's considered not meeting standard and advanced gets smaller and smaller, so the window becomes smaller and smaller. So by the time we get to recommended phase, all this area right here, a student, for example, who reached 37 questions correct would not be passing. But if they scored 38, 39, 40, or 41 questions, so 4 questions, they would be considered passing, and 1 more would be advanced. So the window or the difference between not meeting standard and an advanced score is only about 4 question difference. So we bring this up just to give some concrete example about why the phase 2, level 2 is so important in our on-track criteria and in our scorecard, because as a district, it's going to be important for us not only to measure where our students are at the current phase, but for us to be proactive and think about how we can make sure they're prepared when the new phase finally arrives, because we want them to be very successful once it gets here. This is the data for our end of year targets or outcomes for last school year based on the criteria from the last school year. And you can see that we reached 54% of our students considered on track for graduation. And the only metrics that have been altered for the next upcoming school year, partially because of the new phase, are the ones that I just described. And this is an example of what, if we applied the new criteria to our current outcomes, what the actual result would look like. So you're going to see a little bit of decline simply because the rigor has actually increased, and so the expectations have changed, but the outcomes were still the same. So, for example, if you were to notice the STAR results, in order for them to reach the phase 1 standard, they would have to have less questions correct, so the number would be higher. But when we apply the new expectation, they have to answer more questions correct to be considered passing, and so that number drops a little bit. And the neat thing about this, if you use it as a continuous improvement model, is it allows us to see where that gap is and how we can begin to close the gap before the actual standard hits us. So this is an example of just the on track as far as our starting point for the next school year. Any questions?
Let me just,
Dr. Passos, go ahead.
thank you. Let me just interject. Could you go back one slide
Sure.
there, Stephen? That applying the 14-15 criteria as proposed in terms of revision deflates the scores to some extent because of the phase 2, which is very significant for us, but also in the K1-2 area, the alignment and then the increase in the DRA scores, which
That's
is
correct.
more rigorous. And that begins to show the decrease in some of those scores, but thought that'd be important to note.
So, like, for example, if you would notice in kindergarten, this is the easiest way to see it. In kindergarten, we had 74% that were considered on track for graduation, and the reason being is 92 right here represented the percentage of students that were scoring a level 3 on the DRA. Well, we need to increase that standard in order to close the gap between to close the gap between our students' performance in kinder and their outcomes as they progress or matriculate from grade level to grade level. And so when we apply the new standard of 4, that reduces to 61, which tells us that there's a group of students who are meeting our current standard, but when we apply the new standard, now there's a gap. So it's our intent to intervene in order to help them be more successful.
Thank you, Dr. Wertz. Dr. Resch.
Thank you, President Hogg. I'm glad we're talking about these examples. Could you continue that analysis further down? Because on the, if you look at grade 1,
Which sheet are you referring to?
well, if you look at the 13-14, grade 1 overall is 35. So the first slide, and then the
Okay.
second slide where you've imposed the 14-15 criteria, it goes from 35 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened?
Okay, that's
there?
a very good question. The reason being is because when you go back to the original slide, I'll go back here to show you, the criteria right here, one reason is this altered. In the very first, in this year's criteria, when you look at the standards-based report cards, we were looking at a standard of 100% threes, which means that students mastered every single standard that was actually taught, which is not really a real reflection of on time or on track for graduation, because we all know students who still have gaps that they're learning but are still going to graduate. So in order for us to have a standard that was really going to help us have a trajectory as to whether students were passing or not, or actually going to be prepared for graduation as they matriculate from grade level to grade level, we alter the standard to look for at least 70% at a level 3. Well, when you do that on the new standard, you have there is an increase because we have more students that fall into the category of that 70% instead of the 100%. There are more kids that don't meet the 100% standard. And there isn't, the only reason that we've done this is because the purpose of this report is to help us to determine the trajectory of a student towards on-time graduation, and 100% of threes is not necessarily an indicator of that.
And I know we talked about this a little bit in the work session, but you felt comfortable that 70% wasn't too low, wasn't too inclusive.
Yes, I don't think it's too low at all.
Okay.
I think the 100% mark really created a problem with the data, because it was hard for us to really identify whether a student was really on track, because to assume that a student is off track for graduation because there's one standard they're continuing to have progress on really didn't make any sense. And I'll give you an example. When they do the report cards, some students will get a 2 on a specific standard, which means they're making progress towards mastery. So let's just, for a raw example, say you had to know numbers 1 to 100 and the student can only count to 98. They would get a 2 on the report card. And so what we would do is they would be considered off track because they couldn't say 99 to 100. And we all know that that's not a really good indication that a student would be off track. So we wanted to create a system that allowed us to really use the data to determine whether we really had a severe situation where we need to really pay attention to the students' progress because there was the lack thereof was going to prevent them from being on track for graduation, or whether interventions were appropriate. So to answer your question, no. One other reason is because that 70% is only one indicator of 7. And so in order for this number at the end to be 45 or 50, this represents 45% of the students have mastered or at least met the criteria for each one of the indicators up here. And if there's one indicator off, they're not included in that number, which tells us that there's a problem in attendance or there's a problem with their DRA. So it allows us to really pinpoint what their actual issue is and not just make a generalization.
Right. And so with the adjustments now with these metrics, you feel pretty confident then next year we'll really have some good sound data to really hone in on the interventions and modifying the plan versus readjusting these numbers again?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the adjustment was necessary just after the first year. You kind of had to make some adjustments along the way to make sure the data is feeding you what you needed to tell you what you need to do. Yeah. But we have some really good strategies in place to work towards making the data better. I will say principals use this data every 6 weeks. They get a score. They get a card for their school. And so every 6 weeks, we're sitting down with them. We look at their on-track reports. We identify which students aren't moving, which ones are staying stagnant, which ones aren't meeting targets, and what action plans they have in place. And then at the district level, we look at trends. And I'll give you one example. In the primary grades, what you'll notice here on the on-track is that we have some stagnant growth that's taking place in the primary grades, K2, which is why it's on our scorecard. Before we added the upper level, what initially it looked like is that there was a dip. We had all these students that were coming in from kindergarten, and then they would go to first grade and not be as successful. But when we raised the standard, what we learned was it really wasn't this terrific dip that was happening. We have a large number of kindergarten students that aren't really reading at a 4 when they get to first grade, and so first grade's having trouble moving them up. And so what we've done is we worked with our curriculum department and professional development department this summer. All teachers K through 2 receive professional development over guided reading and word work. We're going to be working on developing protocol to monitor the implementation of that in the classroom and to give coaching to staff. And then we're going to monitor students' outcomes to see if that made a difference. And this report helps drive that because it gives us a sense of where it's happening across the district and which schools are contributing to that challenge.
Okay. I appreciate that. I love that we're data-driven, and looking at the right data is absolutely essential. With the ITBS removal out of the scorecard, you mentioned that we're still doing it. Mm-hmm. We're still looking at it as a point. Where is the value that you see? If it's not in the scorecard, it's not tied to our on-track or our strategic plan. Where is the value? I see value in it, but I'm just curious what your response is.
Well, the reason that we took it out of the on-track is because it was there wasn't consistency in the data points that we were using. And so what would happen is we would watch a student move from reading in DRA in kinder and reading in DRA in first grade, and then we get to second grade, and it'd be ITBS. And then we go to STAR. So it was hard for us to compare apples to apples. Mm-hmm. And so just for some continuity in data so we can really see how kids were moving, we decided to stick with one data point. We still want to use the ITBS because it's important for us to know that if our students are going to be competitive across the country when they leave us and work in the world, we need to know what their reading levels look like compared to their peers outside of Texas. The ITBS will give us a trajectory for that. It will give us an idea of how kids compare to their other peer groups. So that's one reason. Then also, it's also important, I think, to have another data set that you can compare things to make sure that this data is actually producing what we want it to. So if we did DRAs and this number was very low, like let's say it was, well, let's leave it at 60, and then their ITBS came back as 80, that would tell us that there's some discrepancy between the way we're measuring students' reading and what the national norm is across the country. It will allow us to make some better adjustments. So it's a checkpoint.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. And what point would we see that type of data that's not included in the on-track reports? When, like the ITBS results as a performance measure from last year to this year, how we're comparing nationally, when does that come? When would we see that? Where would it fit?
That,
Go ahead.
Excuse me. That comes as part of the annual report that Elaine Say is working on to complete from one year to the next.
Okay.
And the annual report has, remember all those indices and targets and things that are way beyond this or et cetera. That's what Elaine's working on and should have that report in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
We administer it in the spring each year.
Okay. Because I know we're in a public governance role, but we are, as an ISD, in a very competitive environment with homeschool private charters, and they use ITBS as an example all the time. As look at where Johnny's going, where he was last year to this year, and we need to have that same type of talk out there in our marketing, because I'm sure we're just as good, if not better. So.
And we do give it at each of the schools, like I said, in the spring, and the principals do look at their data, and we do look to see how kids are progressing. It's just another way for us to measure. And I think it's important to note, as Dr. Cavazos indicated, this standard that's being created through this system is a locally developed process, and it's designed to increase the amount of rigor so our students are exceeding above what the state minimum expectation is, and to make sure there's not some aspect of their learning process, whether it's a standardized assessment or their skill book report card or even their attendance, that's causing them to trip up along the way. We want to catch it as soon as we can.
And that's right in line with what our goals are here. We are interested in the state, but our target is way up here. The state, we don't want to be the best of the worst, as I've said many times here. The final thing is on this STAR rubric of academic readiness, the green and blue and red. Just a comment, can maybe you have some influence with our commissioner to tell him that unsatisfactory should probably be in the red, and advanced would be green. That's kind of what we're all kind of conditioned to. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Make that phone call, Stephen.
Okay.
Ms. Solons.
Thank you, President Hogg. And Dr. Rush, I had many of the same questions, so thank you for, but I do have just a few more follow-ups as well. On this on track to graduation, is this information reported to parents so that they know their students are on track to graduate?
We don't have a formalized way that we do that other than through individual conferences if a teacher or a principal decide to do that. But the components of the on track is reported to parents. For example, I'll use K through 2 as an example. They have an on the report card, the parents are told specifically which standards their kids are struggling with, which is the first section of the on track right here. And then they're also told specifically what reading level they're at, and we actually tell them on the report card, this is the target your child should be at this year, and this is where they currently are, just to give them some reference points, because a lot of parents don't necessarily know that. And then in conferences, we can also talk to them about DMA, and then attendance is published, when they do the report card. So we don't necessarily have one single report that we push out to parents. We do it through conferences, but we try to disaggregate the data in a way that's meaningful to them, and for a parent, through a report card, for example, through kinder through second, it makes more sense to chunk it out in a way that they can connect it to their individual child.
And how are these conferences? Are they when there's a student that has needs some extra support that they're called in for conference, or does everyone get a conference?
Yeah, well, what the conference I'm talking about is on campuses. If a child is struggling and they need interventions, a lot of times parents will be invited to a meeting that's RTI, or a parent will have a parent conference with the teacher, or sometimes the principal will have a meeting with the teacher and the parent themselves. So not necessarily a structured day where everybody comes and gets a conference. It's based on student need and to make sure parents are informed of how their kids are progressing. And it's not isolated just to kids that are struggling, by the way.
Ms. Solons, hold on just a second. Dr. Cavazos would like to
just to add a little context as to the reporting of this information to parents. Because it was our first year and we wanted to make sure that the data was somewhat stable and we had the right targets, we didn't want to say this is the actual, you're on track to graduation or you're not, until we get more stable data. And like we're doing now is proposing some revisions to stabilize that so it can be reliable.
That's outstanding to get the system developed locally and make sure that it's reliable. And then I'd like to commend you, Dr. Cavazos, for insisting that we set the standards above the state. Not only because we like to see high scores, because it allows the students to be best prepared for their futures. And I truly appreciate the entire staff's focus on that. Does this information then is not really particularly at this point disaggregated to a student and used for other reasons, like finding a student that is ready to move on, has mastered, great. That's not the intent at this.
It's not designed to, do you mean as far as promotion requirements? Is that what you're referring
No,
to? Or moving
no,
on
just,
as far as mid-year to another?
You know, if a student arrives in class and has mastered, arrives with mastery, so that they can move on, open the ceiling and move forward.
For acceleration?
Acceleration,
Yeah,
yes.
and that's the future of this report and this data, is to not only target our deficiencies and interventions, but also to make sure that when there are some acceleration opportunities for students, that they happen. And I'll just make sure we're clear on the fact that we communicate all of the components, as you said, Dr. Wirtz, of this information to parents, but in terms of putting them all together and saying you're on track or not, for this first year we didn't, but all those components are communicated to parents.
Very good. And just one other question on the scale score.
Yes.
Not that chart. Yeah, that chart. And that shows, that's an indication of growth.
Yes.
And is this something that would show us a year and a year? A lot of times we talk, if we could show year and a year growth for students, that would be very meaningful, because some students present with tremendous academic deficit, others with mastery, but, what's important is that they're moving a year and a year at least.
That's essentially the design of a scale score with the state. It's to track students' progress from year to year, and they do have a progress measure now in our accountability system, so we not only look at which students pass the assessment, but also whether they meet the progress measure. It's a somewhat complicated statistical analysis, and if you were to look at scale scores from year to year, these charts they release, you'll see that the scale score changes up and down a little bit depending upon the number of questions that are correct, and they actually establish that standard typically after the assessment is given. So we will know, for example, this is 2014's what happened this school year based upon the assessment they just gave, but we don't necessarily know what the actual scale score is going to be for like 15 questions correct for this upcoming testing season yet. It will happen after the fact. But they do use the scale score to track a student's progress from one school year to the next. The state does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Solons. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, President Hogg. I think we would be very remiss to tell parents that their children were not on track to graduation with the data that we've got so far, and I might go out on a limb and say we probably should never tell parents that, especially for a kindergartner. That would be really depressing. So we can keep the information and we can let the parents know, but I really don't think we should tell them that their kids aren't going to graduate when they're that big. Scale score chart. Those are state numbers, right? Those are not our numbers.
Yes, that's correct.
Those I'm pointing over there.
Yeah.
Okay. So for my colleagues, if you got 27 questions right this year, you were in the blue area.
Correct.
Agreed? And if you got 27 questions right next year, you were in the fail area.
If they had done the new phase, which they're not doing, but yeah, you're correct.
Now, in order to stay in the blue area between this year and next year, you'd have to get 6 additional questions right. Okay, that's an increase in your score by 22%. Okay. And the following year, you'd have to get another 6% right, or 6 questions right, which is another 19%. I'm afraid that this is a lot like NCLB that said everybody has to get 100% of the questions right 100% of the time. And it might be real pie in the sky. We would love for our kids to get 100% of everything right. I don't know that we can get there in 2 more years.
I don't think the commissioner necessarily believes that either, which is why they're extending the deadline. So this next year, after looking at state results, they've decided to extend phase 1 another year. And the explanation that they had in the letter was to allow students more opportunity to master the new content. They have new standards, for example, in math before we roll into the next phase. So that's right now, that's the prediction. We have no idea if or when we'll actually get to the recommended phase, but right now we're still standing in phase 1. And I think for the reason that you're describing, the state still needs some time to adjust.
These are big leaps we're looking for.
They really are, yes.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Imagine that, Austin, giving us rules.
I'll make that phone call too when I call about the other thing.
Mr. Wirtz, you probably should just drive down there.
I know, right?
Just knock on their door
All
and
right.
say, hello, do you know who I am? So, any other questions from colleagues? Mr. Barron, I agree. Ms. Solons, I love everything on technology, but I think it's alarming. I don't think we should put this on the student self-serve, the parent self-serve that pops up, red flag, your kindergartner's off track to graduation. But Mr. Wirtz, I do think it makes a difference to have that discussion with the parent and say, here's what we're tracking, here's what we're using, here's where we're behind, we need to get caught up on this to give some realistic outlooks. Ms. Solons?
Yes, I would just like to add that I certainly wasn't suggesting that we need to sell 5-year-olds. They're not on
Oh,
track
no.
to graduate. However, I do think that you do have to tell parents, if we know that a child, no matter what age they are, have an academic deficiency that their parents can help with, the report card may say you have a 90. Their STAR, we see the difference in those tests may be something very different. And so if we know that the student needs support, I think we should make sure that parents know so that they can be involved early on. So that's my point, but probably not for a 5-year-old, Mr. Barron and Mr. Hall.
Well, I agree, and the report cards are going to very clearly list where the student is deficient, and parents can help their kids with that, if it's in reading or poetry or whatever.
Yeah, it will. The primary grade report cards, because they're standards-based and we're moving to second grade next year, are more rigorous because now we're not only telling them that they're passing, we're telling them specifically what they're doing well at and actually what range of proficiency they have in each of the specific standards that we're measuring. So if a student's struggling with letter sound identification, we can say they're close to it, they're not quite here, here's specifically how many letters they're still missing and what you can do at home. Yeah.
I think the standards-based report cards is a great answer, but I think we're doing them 3 out of 12 grades or so.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay,
so,
1, 2, 3.
yeah.
Ms. Pena?
I was just curious how today we handle discussions with parents, because I know what they did 20 years ago, but when a child is academically on track, let's say in kindergarten and first grade, but it's deemed by the teacher that the child has motor skill difficulties, therefore the teacher recommends that the child be held back. Do we still do that?
We have criteria that we use for promotion or retention, and we look at specific skills. So, for example, in first grade, we have, of the skill-based report card, we have a set of standards that we feel are high priority targets that if a child misses them, they will struggle in the following grade level, and we look for proficiency, a specific level of proficiency in each of those. And if a child is struggling with it, we may recommend that they go to extended school year to receive services and then be assessed again. But automatic retention, no, that's not the practice. We don't just automatically retain students. We do try to fill the deficiency. To answer your question also, as soon as the neat thing about the reports that we're doing as far as reading data goes is we can identify or pinpoint which building block in literacy is causing the child trouble. And then when we meet with the parent as soon as possible, as soon as we notice it, the goal is to meet with the parent as soon as possible and identify a prescriptive intervention that's going to address the diagnosis. So if a child is struggling with gross motor skills or even fine motor skills, we are intending to intervene. And what we'll do is we'll bring the experts in from the district office or even at the campus and include the parent to try and identify what interventions we can put in place to ensure their success.
But would that be, if academically they're doing fine, would that be cause to believe that that child is not on target to graduate?
No, not at this point. Based upon the description you're giving about gross motor skills, no, that's not one of our criteria for whether a student gets promoted or retained.
And I don't think they were not automatically retained. The discussion was between the teacher and the parent, the teacher making the recommendation to hold the child back.
I don't know the specific scenario you're referring to, but I can say that when
I just wondered if the practice was still in place.
Retention or specifically around gross motor skills?
Retention, recommendation to retain the child because they lack gross motor skills?
We don't have anything right now in policy or practice that says if you lack gross motor skills, we're going to recommend retention. It sounds like maybe an anomaly. We look at other things.
Yeah, because I know when my daughter was in first grade, there were 6 kids that they did that to.
Mm-hmm.
All of them academically met the criteria,
Mm-hmm.
but they either lacked in social skills or motor skills.
Yeah, right now that's not typically a practice. What we look at specifically are the criteria of academic skills and the things that we kind of share with you tonight. And if they meet those academic criteria, we do recommend promotion. Yeah.
Dr. Vassos?
Yeah, and I'd like to, that's a good point, and add to the importance and the value of a standards-based report card, because it's very clear from the very beginning what standards we're expecting our K-1, 2 students to master in order to move on and get promoted and be successful and et cetera. So that's the real value, is that it takes a lot of other variables out and inputs the variables that we know make students successful at those grade levels, and very clear to parents.
I think part of it is also orienting staff to what the research says about retention and what indicators we know are going to be the indicators that actually where retention can be successful and when it would not be successful or not. So, but to answer your question, no, that's not a practice that we have.
Okay, with that, thank you, Dr. Wirtz.
All right.
Yeah, I think Ms. Mays is making that motion. We're ready for, we willing to take a motion by all means.
I would like to make a motion to approve the 2014-15 district scorecard targets.
Do I have a second?
Second? No.
Too slow, Ms. Sullins. I have a motion by Ms. Mays and a second by Mr. Hibbs. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 7 trustees present, 7 trustees voting in the affirmative. We have our district scorecard targets. Next, we'll move into item B, consider 2014-15 district improvement plan goals. Dr. Vassos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And so part of the process, as you know, for now compliance, the scorecard was well beyond compliance. So we have to have a district improvement plan as mandated by the state. And we want to make sure that we go over the targets in the district improvement plan. Those require board approval as well, and show and demonstrate how they cascade from our scorecard into a district improvement plan. So, Dr. Link?
First of all, there is a board policy that says the board must approve our goals and objectives and the campus and district improvement plans, which we are not there yet. We're just asking you to look at the goals so far in the district improvement plan. The purpose of the district improvement plan is numerous. We want to make sure we have an approach to continuous improvement, that we align our efforts with the district's strategic plan. We look at the data to establish priorities. It provides focus and direction. We identify targets that outline interventions, and we make sure that we comply with state statutes. The district planning process, we've been involved in this for quite a few months. We've had district improvement planning training, plan for learning concurrent with the CIP training. That's a campus improvement plans, and it's a web-based program where all the campuses and the district departments can put their campus and district plans into plan for learning. There was a huge collaboration with the senior staff, curriculum instruction, principals, accountability planning and testing, and the student group to develop the draft of this plan. The DIDC reviewed the draft of the goals and refined where necessary. That was August 14th. We are hoping that the DIP and all the parts will be completed September 25th and plan to be here again on October 9th to present it to you in completion. There are 4 major goals that were specifically required in the plan: on track to graduation, to obtain a MET standard rating, advanced academics, and learning environment. And this lines pretty much exactly with the scorecard, but we're looking at the 4 main goals. The performance objectives for the on track to graduation, we will address the areas with greatest need, especially at the campus level. Needs are different, so their campus plan will address them differently. The potential areas that will be looked at are the course subject passing rate, the STAR performance, of course, at the higher level, K2E, end of year, DRA, EDL, and DMA, attendance, and the number of credits for high school students. Second big goal, obtain a MET standard. Again, we're going to look at the areas with greatest needs. We will be doing the higher standard of Phase 2 Level 2 STAR performance, and that's based on the indices 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are the student achievement, closing performance gaps, post-secondary readiness, and there's another one, and student progress. Those are the 4 indices. Advanced academics, that's quite a large portion of our scorecard because we believe that we want our students to stretch and be the best. So we're increasing the participation in advanced academics. Our juniors, we're getting them to meet college readiness standards on the PSAT, and the participation rate of students taking certification exams. And then with help from the Studer Group, we have the surveys, the Employee Engagement Survey, the District Services Survey, and the Parent Satisfaction Survey that affects our learning environment for the students as well as faculty and staff.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Link. Questions from colleagues? Dr. Rush?
Just a quick question. I think these are great. At what point will we possibly transition from participation on the advanced academics to the analysis of how they're doing?
We're going to do that in conjunction with it this year and be ready for it next year. And the reason is, with the effort of increasing the participation rate, we're thinking that maybe the passing rate will go down because we're including more students.
Sure.
And currently, the passing rate of the students that took it was 86%, which was relatively high. So the goal was to get more students to take it. We will look at what the passing rate is at that time, and that'll become our baseline for next year. But they will be looking at it anyway.
Okay.
It's just not as part of the scorecard.
Right, right. Very good. Thank you.
Dr. Cavazos?
I'll add that that's part of our annual report as well, to look at both participation and performance, so we get a good balance of those two things.
And Dr. Rush, I think it's a good question. I think as we get into participation in the future, we start looking at how that, and is participation possibly enough for us to evaluate? I think it's a real thing to consider, but I like the idea of looking farther than that. Any further comments, questions from colleagues? With that, I would entertain a motion.
Got a motion?
Perfect, Mr. Brand.
I move to approve the 2014-2015 District Improvement Plan goals.
I have a motion by Mr. Barron. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Pena. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 7 trustees present, 7 trustees voting in the affirmative. We have 2014-15 District Improvement Plan goals. Next, we have consider TASB Policy Update 100. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg, and this is a policy update that has been reviewed with the board committee, and I don't know if they want to make comments on that, but it's been reviewed and processed through the board committee, and Michael Hill has led that effort.
And again, this is kind of a, as it comes from TASB, we do take these updates and we take them through the process here. And so, again, a little bit of background on Update 100. It addresses recent amendments to the administrative code. Topics affected by the rule changes include performance reports, which we talked a little bit about today, delayed payments for IMA, and some conversation or literature on credit by exam with prior instruction. Other changes address legal options for security personnel, the DIP and CIP, and employee life and health benefits, or insurance, I'm sorry. Again, this is standard. The legal updates, they come straight from TASB as a law. We don't really have much say. We don't have any say in those. We just, that's the law. And the local updates, we take them for the board to approve any adoptions, revisions, or to repeal that policy. Again, the process is that administrative staff, the appropriate staff, including the board subcommittee and legal, has reviewed all of the local policies, and we recommend the approval as it is presented in the packet. Again, here is just a list of the codes that were affected, or the policies that were affected through Update 100. The local policy here, and then there were 2 pages of legal policy. That, again, all of this has been reviewed by the board subcommittee. Just a little bit of detail. DCE local, it makes a clarification on this policy as it represents to non-Chapter 21 contracts, and that's those positions within the district that are executive director and above. They are on a non-Chapter Chapter 21 contract. Policy EHDB legal, credit by exam courses with prior instruction for credit must be approved by the board. That's a legal policy. Legal policy EIC, students on the new foundation graduation program will need to complete the distinguished level of achievement to be eligible for automatic admissions. Okay. FDA prohibits the district from revoking transfers mid-year. Again, this is a practice that we have in the district anyway, and so that's our practice. FEA legal deals with excused absences and state that they should be counted as present for purposes of calculating the ADA. And administration recommends the board approve the local policies presented in Update 100 as they are presented.
Thank you, Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Earl, sorry.
I just wanted to add a couple more things
Sorry
here.
about
Appropriate staff will continue to make sure that these policy revisions and updates are communicated through all the way to the campus level or to the department level that's most appropriate for those. And at this time, I'll take any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Ms. Sullins.
Thank you, President Hogg. I wanted to share with the board that we, as a governance subcommittee, Dr. Reich and Mr. Barron and myself went through all of the policies. Appreciate your time taking us through all of those, Mr. Hill. And spent quite a bit of time going through these, and then I think we've had them as a group here for a little more than a week, but wanted to let you know that once again that our district has all of the policies updated, complete, posted, and it's a great feeling to be on top of that. So appreciate the diligence that you have to keep that. It's a lot of policies coming and a lot of changes, and it's pretty time consuming, but I just wanted to share with the board that the governance subcommittee spent a considerable amount of time reviewing these as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Sullins. And I think in the last year and a half, we have to thank the whole board and the staff from the major work that went into TASB policy 98 update, and then we jumped right into 99 to get completed of that one, and now we're staying up to speed to make sure it's always a good thing to stay up to our policies.
So if I could, on behalf of the committee,
Please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the policy update 100 from committee.
I have a motion by committee requiring no second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Barron.
Just one thing, Mr. Hogg, President Hogg, on FEA legal, where excused absences shall be counted as present for the purposes of calculating ADA. We're probably going to need some training on that for our attendance clerks to make sure that gets entered correctly. There are a lot of very specific excused absences.
That's correct.
And
Go ahead.
that's a part of that training to make sure that we get it all the way through the system to
Right.
those who are who need to know that policy. And so that's
Thank you.
well noted. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Barron. With that, would trustees, we have a motion from committee. Please vote. 7 trustees present, 7 trustees voting in the affirmative. We've now updated TASB policy update 100. Next, we'll move on to items to be withdrawn from consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda? Ms. Pena.
I'd like to withdraw one of the RFQs on items C, would be 14-79 RFQ for architectural services.
Got it, Ms. Pena. Any others? Perfect. Ms. Powell.
President Hogg, board members, Dr. Cavazos, we have on the agenda for your consideration now 4 bids after we've pulled this one. In all cases, the board or the administration recommends the bids that are the lowest bids and the bids representing the best value to the district. We also have donations on the agenda this evening, and the total donations presented for consideration tonight $7,043, which brings our year-to-date total to $50,629.
Wonderful. Thank the community, and already $50,000 for the year as we just start out. That's a wonderful thing. At this time, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of C-1479?
Move to accept as stated.
I have a motion by Dr. Reich and a second by Mr. Hibbs. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 7 trustees present, 7 trustees voting in the affirmative. Consent agenda with 1 item removed has passed. Now we'll discuss consent items that were withdrawn. C-1479, RFQ for architectural services. Ms. Pena.
The right person is standing at the
How convenient.
microphone. However, I still miss those drummers.
Me too.
We've gone over this before, and we talked about this in our work session, but for the sake of the public so that they understand the process that we went through on this, because this is very important and specific to the bond that we just passed. What I'd like you to explain is the process that was used, and I'm going to give this all to you, and if you need me to repeat it, I'm more than be happy to do that. What was the process used? How many local submissions did we have? How many hub submissions? Breakout of construction. There was a breakout of construction projects. Explain why. And explanation of current and future phases of the bond process for the different elements that we're going to have construction done to.
Okay. All right.
Need those repeated, Ms. Powell?
No, I think I got it here.
Okay.
We'll see. All right, in terms of the process, we started in the spring working with Jacobs Project Management to develop the process and to work on the RFQ itself. We created an RFQ document with their assistance, and we issued that. We held a pre-proposal conference. I believe there were 91 people who attended that conference in this room, representing approximately 75 different firms. We actually received 55 submissions. 44 of those were from architecture firms, 11 were from engineers. So then our evaluations focused on the 44 from the architecture firms. As part of our work with Jacobs, we developed a scoring matrix, and we reviewed that scoring matrix along with the process itself with the board. We asked firms to tell us in their submission which project or projects they wanted to work on. And we also asked them to submit to us some prescribed information on 5 different projects that they had done similar to the ones they were expressing interest in. And so once we got their qualification statement, we had that information along with their information about their own staff that would be working on our projects, along with any of the sub-consultants that they anticipated using. They were also supposed to identify for us in their submission if the firm itself was a hub vendor, and then provide that documentation to us. They also had to indicate to us the percent of hub participation that they were committing to with the project. And then they were asked to submit, again, as part of this initial submission, information about their sub-consultants, who they were going to use for different engineering disciplines, the specific individuals and the firms, and to tell us which were hubs. So once we had all that information there was a committee of 7 senior staff members who evaluated those submissions. We reviewed the submissions from the 44 architecture firms. And we scored them using the scoring matrix that the board had input on. That scoring matrix gave additional points to local vendors, local architecture firms, and also additional points to firms based on the percent of hub participation they committed to. And it was kind of a scaled point award there. So once we had the submissions, this team of 7 individuals met. We reviewed on our own all the submissions, all 44 of them. We came back together, we compiled all of our scores and averaged them, and then we went through a process where we assigned each of those 44 firms into what we called a bucket. It was a size range of projects that we felt like that they had demonstrated appropriate experience for and capacity to do. And so we had several different size ranges. So we assigned all of the architects to one of these size ranges, and then within their bucket, we ranked them in order by their score. Then we went through and we determined what we thought was an appropriate cut point on the score, and we set that at 70 points. And so we brought in all the firms that had scored a 70 or above. We wound up having firms from every one of the buckets that scored over 70 points. We had a total of 18 firms. So we brought them in, that same group of 7 administrators, along with several additional people from specific areas that were going to have facilities built as part of the bond program. We all interviewed the 18 firms. It took us 3 days to do it. We interviewed the 18 firms, and we scored the architects in their interviews. We compiled our scores. We had discussion amongst the staff, and then based on our combined information of the initial review of the qualification submissions, the interview process, references, and their demonstrated relevant experience, then we identified architects for the specific projects. To the question about explain how the packages were divided up, likewise, we worked with Jacobs on that in the spring. They helped us take all the projects in the bond package, and we sequenced out the work, and we packaged the different projects into bid packages. And so we had, I believe there were roughly 21 bid packages that are represented here this evening. And so the intent was to have different size ranges of packages to give different size firms the capacity and the ability to bid, so that they weren't all great big giant projects. We had some that were smaller, medium-sized and larger projects. So that was the purpose of having a number of different packages, and also we understand that no one firm could do all that work. So I think the other question was about explaining the phases. This is a 5-year bond program, and so as part of the work we did with Jacobs, we sequenced out all of the work over the full 5-year period, and we have phases. And the phases are not unique to a particular year. For example, the first 2 phases, the first phase is starting now. The second phase was going to start about a month behind that. Both those phases, all of the projects in both those phases will be done by August of 2017. And so we have still 3 phases of work to go, and so we still have an additional, at least one more procurement process for design professionals, possibly more than that. So I think I've hit most of the questions. The question about number of submissions from local vendors and hubs, again, we had 44 total submissions from architecture firms. Of the 44, 12 of those firms are located in Tarrant County. Is what we were identifying as local. So they got the highest number of additional points because they were located in Tarrant County. Firms that were located in Dallas and the DFW Metroplex also got a couple of extra points, but they didn't get the max there. So 12 of the 44 were local. We are recommending 12 firms to you all tonight. Of those 12, 5 are local. So that's 42% of the ones that we're recommending to you all tonight. On the hub vendors, again, 44 total firms submitted their qualifications, and of the 44, 10 of those are themselves hub vendors. And of the 12 that we're bringing to you tonight, 2 of the 12 are themselves hub vendors. In addition, we had in that scoring matrix additional points for hub participation. So every one of these firms that submitted told us, here's the percent of hub participation we're committing to. And so on the 12 we're bringing to you this evening, that hub participation ranges anywhere from 15.4%, I believe, up to 33%. And it is our intention that as we sign contracts with these architects, they will identify to us for certain who their sub-consultants are in writing, the commitment of the percent of their their work that sub-consultant will have. And then we will monitor that across the project, and we will compile that information. We'll report it to our Bond Oversight Committee, and we'll report it back to the board. And then we'll do a final accounting of that at the end of each project.
So the architects that we're selecting tonight are not guaranteed that they will get Phase 3 and Phase 4?
No.
It will be, the whole process will
Correct.
start again?
Right.
So it will give opportunities to others to do this as well?
Yes.
That's real important, because I want to make sure that people don't think that it's a done deal now. There's no more work left for them. That there are phases and people will have more opportunity, and that we are going to hold those that are not hubs to use hubs. We're going to hold them accountable to that process. Yes. Because we want to make sure that the historically underutilized businesses get an opportunity. Okay, I just want to make that very clear so that the public understands too, that the board is well aware that this is a very big bond package, and we are concerned for our community just as anyone else is. And we made, we have stated over and over again, we want to ensure that that these projects are done quality, of course. We want quality there, but that we want the opportunity given to as many people as possible, and understood that we're going to be doing something here in this building, or and you can correct me if I'm wrong, where we're going to bring people in to explain more our process so that we can help more people to understand how AISD does business and give them the opportunity to be able to put in those applications. This is not, we don't want anyone thinking they don't have a chance.
Right. We already participate with the City of Arlington in a monthly standing meeting to share information with all new vendors about how to do business with the city and with the school district, and that will continue. We have plans to have an event with the chambers, all the chambers, to give an update on where we are in the bond program, and again, to give some information about how they can submit information to do business with us. And we will determine a schedule. The frequency, we'll just determine what is the appropriate frequency, and we will have some meetings here and invite people in to talk to them about how to do business with the district, or go to them if we need to.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pena. Mr. Hibbs.
Cindy, I want to tell you I appreciate the process that you all undertook on this. Just for clarity's sake, this room was packed just a few weeks ago with architects and construction firms that learned about this process. This has been the most transparent process that I think I've seen of any of the work that we've gone out with. So I want to tell you that from a standpoint, Mr. Carlisle, Tony, yourself, I appreciate the efforts that you went to. The board gave you a long checklist to try to work with, and I think that it was fair for us to do. In the same way, at this point, anyone that put in their bids were very aware of what the criteria was. And so if anybody should ever contact us, a board member, I can tell you that we very confidently can tell them that that they were very aware of what the process was, and I think that from what I'm hearing from the architects now, they were very appreciative of that. So from that, I want to thank you for that. We've got a long road to hoe. We've got 5 years worth of projects that's going to come, and we're just touching the surface. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that we are trying to find local businesses. Some Dallas County firms are actually closer than some of the Tarrant County firms in miles wise. So we have to be cognizant that this is a DFW area also. you know, and I'm saying this because I sit on the Finance Committee, and we look at this and we review these matters. So, again, I don't want anybody to take away from this discussion that the due diligence to coming down to the 12 people that are being recommended tonight wasn't done. It was actually a very thorough process. It was a very transparent process, and there's still more opportunities because of percentages that are in many of these individual persons' bids that will allow for even more HUD and minority businesses to be able to work within that. So again, I just want to compliment the district on your work, and look forward to seeing this process move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbs. Dr. Reich.
I guess I would have to echo most of what Mr. Hibbs just stated. Cindy, I'm very pleased with everything that we've done. You know me, over the years, this is near and dear to my heart, still is. And for those that don't know, this is our the first time we've done anything like this in this district. I think it's a beginning. I don't think we're at the end, and it's a great beginning. Thank you. You guys have done an outstanding job. Our goals of focusing on the best quality, as well as paying attention to hub targets and people that invest locally, invest in Arlington, is so important. I guess one thing that I would ask, don't necessarily have to do anything formally, but it might be helpful to continue to query or evaluate or have the architect and construction firms evaluate this process, because this is just a beginning. And if there's any additional tweaks, anything, if people, the winners and the losers, if they don't feel the way our goal was to make them feel, that everybody would walk away maybe a little disappointed if they didn't get the work, but that it was a wonderful, fair, transparent, quality process, that's, I think, what we're shooting for. And if there's any perceptions out there that are otherwise, it would be good to hear and to see if it's worth vetting out.
I think we would appreciate that input, so.
Yeah.
Agree.
Dr. Reich, we survey everyone else. Students, staff,
right.
parents, we might as well survey them, and I have a feeling some of the surveys say, I won more business, I'm happy. I didn't win more business, but you have to ask really detailed survey questions to get that. I think it's a good idea, Dr. Reich. Ms. Mays.
Thank you. One thing I was going to say, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Dr. Reich said, to get input from all of the businesses that thankfully wanted to participate with AISD, and get that input. As you said, we've got additional phases to go through so that if there needs to be any tweaking, that we would have an opportunity to do that. I did just have 3 questions. My first question is, were there any categories where there was only one architect firm for that range? And if so, were they still interviewed?
Well, there were multiple architect firms put into the range for each one of the ranges. Right. There was, I believe, one of the ranges, the one that had the smallest dollar value projects, where there was only one firm that scored above a 70. And we interviewed that firm. That firm was not one of the final ones recommended for selection.
After the interview?
Right.
Thank you. My second question was still on the range portion. In the submission from the architects, could they place their name in more than one range of the jobs they thought they could do?
What we actually put them in the ranges, the buckets, if you will. What we asked them to tell us was which one of our projects, they had the project list, they had the bid packages that we were soliciting professional design services for. We asked them to tell us which one or ones of these are you submitting for? We had some firms that submitted for 1 or 2 or 3. We had some firms that said they'd do any of the work in there. And then they had to give us 5 examples of projects that they had completed that were similar in size and scope to the range that, or to the specific projects that they were seeking. So largely based on their demonstrated experience and then the preference that they were expressing, that's where we went through and we said, okay, this firm has the capacity, they have the experience with this particular size range of projects or this one. So we put them in those ranges. But they had the option to tell us that they wanted anywhere from 1 to all of them, all the projects.
Okay. And then my last question, the points that were given for Hub, was it points that were given if you were the owner?
No.
Or were there points that were given because you said you would incorporate Hub subcontractors?
It's the latter. It's, we were that way, and we were consistent with how we scored everyone.
Okay.
We were looking at that second tier participation, if you will. So that scoring, those points were assigned based on their sub-consultants, the engineering firms that they would partner with on these projects.
Okay. So if you were a Hub owner, you would not receive additional benefit for being a Hub contractor. There would be no differentiation between that and just saying, I'm not Hub, but I will hire Hub subcontractors. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Barron.
Thank you, President Hogg. I'm ready to make a motion.
I think we're ready to accept one, Mr.
Thank
Barron.
you. I move that we accept consent item 14-79 RFQ for architectural services.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a motion by Mr. Barron, a second by Ms. Solons. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 7 trustees present, 7 trustees voting in the affirmative. Item C-1479 passes. Ms. Pena, she doesn't have any drums. We all want it, but Ms. Powell, give it about a month, and then we'll stop talking about the drums eventually. So, next we'll move discussion item. Discussion item A, 4th quarterly review of 2013 action plans for Achieve Today, Excel Tomorrow strategic plan. I see our friend in the audience, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg, and this is that quarterly review that Elaine Say will provide a presentation. Thank you, Elaine, for being here. Welcome.
I'm here to give you an overview of the activities that were completed in the last quarter of the 13-14 plan. So it's sort of like old news, but we do need to summarize here. Remember that the items that are mentioned in this summary are just examples of the kinds of activities that were completed, and I tried to select, as for this presentation, those that are maybe the most significant ones. So clearly not all of the activities are listed here, but they are all documented in the actual action plans, the complete action plans. In terms of Goal 1, learning and achievement, the instructional strategy training began for administrators, and that occurred in the summer, and then the preparation for the training for teachers was set to begin in August. The House Bill 5 website, which deals with the new graduation plans, was launched in June, and there was a lot of work done on the data warehouse that Chad is heading up. It was approved by the board in May, and the hardware and software were put in place, and the steering committee that's going to help establish the work and sort of oversee the work of the development of the data warehouse was put together. That steering committee was formed, and then it included a subcommittee of principals that started reviewing the data dashboard content. So that was a lot of work on the data warehouse was compacted into that last quarter. In terms of Goal 2 with higher education, the PGP process was completed and finalized, and data from career cruising was moved over into Teams, so that those registrations were all transferred. And so that process was put in place to start this school year. In terms of some higher education career training, Lockheed Industries interviewed students and will be using 5 student interns for this school year. And then one of the biggest development projects, the Early College High School work was completed in terms of getting the students' applications received and selecting students to participate in the Early College High School program. And so 125 of those students will start the program next week. Goal 4, world-class facilities. Well, I think we know a lot about that from what Cindy just discussed, but obviously the bond was approved. Jacobs Management was working with the implementation of the plan, and phases 1 and 2, as Cindy just described, were all put in place. Goal 5, safe and secure environment. The positive behavior intervention system was completed and is ready for implementation this school year. And the discipline data management software system will become part of the data dashboard in this school year. Goal 10, highly effective teachers. Probably the biggest development there is the hiring of a professional development director, and the revision of the curriculum documents and how those will be used in the new year. Goal 3, staff retention and support. You're, of course, very familiar with the TASB recommendations on the salary study, and all of those processes to complete that implementation were completed in the final quarter. One piece after the work that just developing that, putting that plan in place, was the follow-up with staff. And there was a lot of intense work with, especially with non-teacher employees receiving personalized letters, and a lot of individual follow-up with that through small groups and individual meetings. And then work began on development of the RFP for the performance pay process that will begin this school year. Goal 8, customer service and culture of integrity. Well, we did all the survey work. The 3rd District Services Survey, the student surveys, and it says 6, 9, and 10, but it was 6, 8, and 10, plus the graduating seniors. And the Parent Satisfaction Survey. And then also in this area, the online registration system was tested with a kindergarten roundup. Effective leadership. Probably the biggest development work was done on the Emerging Leaders Program, which will replace the Aspiring Principals and Assistant Principal Academy with that $1.3 million funding from Raise Your Hand Texas. And the recruitment's been completed, and they had 120 applicants for the program, and 35 were accepted to start immediately. They've already started. The Harvard Leadership Program, we have actually 1 secondary principal and 4 elementary principals that participated in that program in the summer. And we have a district team that's also attended the leadership program. In terms of engaged community, Aaron was very, very busy. There were lots of different activities. The Papalooza event, the second Parent University was offered in May. The General Motors Foundation is working in partnership with the district to sponsor a lot of programs. Those are listed there. They provided funding along with the guiding principles for the programs that they're sponsoring. The district also participated in a pilot program for nutrition with UTA College of Nursing, and helped facilitate a plan for student participation in a Tarrant County Fathers program to help new fathers in terms of learning what it is to be a father. And then last is community engagement recognition. Not only the recognition that happens at the board meetings, but also the volunteer appreciation awards. And then this year they track the actual hours to be able to award special recognition to volunteers with, 250 or 500 plus hours. Goal 11, communications. Fact sheets were developed in lots of new areas, and I still think those fact sheets are so well done. They, to me, provide an outstanding summary of all the new initiatives that the district's undertaking. And then, of course, in preparation for the bond issue, there were a lot of presentations that were done prior to the bond. Next steps, as Dr. Cavazos mentioned in an earlier comment, we'll have the final report on the measures that measure outcomes from the 13-14 school year. I'll be here in 2 weeks. And then the plans for year 3, the final year of this 3-year plan, in terms of the new actions that will be a part of that plan.
Ms. Say, are we sure that was only a quarter?
Lots of stuff.
We told you to report a quarter,
Yeah,
not 3
just a
years.
quarter, yeah.
Wow. Ms. Sullins.
Exactly on the same line as looking at all this, it looks like you guys have been very busy. And page after page of new projects and processes that are bringing this district to premier. So I don't have any questions, just a huge thank you for your presentation, and commend you, Dr. Cavazos, on the leadership of the district, because a lot of things are going on. Thank you.
And I think more important to note is these things are being completed, but they're also being completed and still being tracked for productivity and measurements to make sure they're not just being completed to be completed. Lots of people can do lots of work. We want to make sure we're doing work that's measurable and impactful and effective. You're right, Dr. Esch. So, perfect, wonderful. Any other questions from questions or comments from colleagues? With that, Ms. A, we'll move on to the next one, review of 2014-15 action plans, strategic plan.
Okay, I might have, oh, well, they're so good. I love that remote control part. Okay.
Don't boost his ego too
So
much.
now let's talk about this year. And of course, these plans have been developed and are underway. We're just now giving you this overview, but many things are already occurring. You know that the action plans actually include the actual activities that are going to be accomplished, who's responsible, what resources are needed, and when they're expected to be completed, so that we can make sure that everybody stays on track and that things do get accomplished. We had 21 strategies that will continue from the 13-14 year into this school year. 3 strategies were dropped off because they were completed. 2 of them were financed, like the bond and the preparation for the bond, and the initiation of the CTHEI course in grade 8. So those dropped off. 7 new strategies were added, so those are the last strategies to be included in the 3-year plan. So we have a total of 25 action plans for the district. 3 action plans have 2 different strategies combined, so there's, less actual plans than there are strategies included in those. And those that are combined include performance pay and the appraisal system, because, those go together, and so it's easier to report those processes in one plan. And then selection and retention of staff and leadership pipeline, because those are so closely related. And then marketing and communications, we've decided to combine 2 of those strategies into one action plan. And I just described to you the components of the actual action plan, what's included. And in terms of inspired leaders, what I'm going to go through is just to take each goal and then each strategy and give you sort of again, the highlights of the activities that are planned for the year. In terms of MPE, they'll be assigning autonomies to new schools, and those schools that were granted autonomies in the first year will continue into the second year, and the focus will be on building capacity of those MPE principals and monitoring implementation of that process. On the instructional model, the focus will be on the development of professional development for schools that are for teachers in pilot schools, so it won't be implemented district-wide. It'll start out in pilot schools. And they'll be implementing recommendations from the curriculum audit. I've highlighted the new strategies in red so that you can identify the new ones that are added. Co and extracurricular activities for students. Of course, that's not a new initiative, but it's a new initiative from the perspective of this plan. One of the activities, the implementation of wrestling at junior high, and they'll be conducting a student survey in terms of current student involvement in extra and co-curricular activities to include not only activities occurring as part of the school day, but beyond the school day, outside of the school. And they will then study those results and make recommendations for new or modifications and offerings. In guidance and academic support, the focus is going to be on implementing the personal graduation plans and on monitoring and implementing the new House Bill 5 graduation requirements. The local accountability system strategy, the focus is on track for graduation. You got a great overview and discussion of that tonight. So that data will be housed in the data warehouse and be as part of the data dashboard. And that data will then be available. It'll be rolled out for use of principals in the beginning and then rolled down to other groups throughout the year. And they have the committee that I mentioned earlier that will monitor the process and evaluate the process as they're going through implementation. Workforce partnership under the higher education and career focus. They will implement that Lockheed internship program that I mentioned a few minutes ago. And then they will work to identify certifications aligned with the demands of the industry in preparation for the new CTHE center that will open in 2017. So the focus will be on, looking forward and looking at those certifications that will be in demand. And then in terms of higher ed partnerships, they'll implement the partnership with the police academy at the high school level and develop plans for a STEM academy with UTA. And of course, implement the early college high school program, and then continue to work on expanding those dual credit opportunities for the following year. World-class facilities, implement the facilities vision, and as you heard, they're contracting with design professionals. They've used consultants to help plan and sequence the projects. And there'll be staff added to help manage those bond projects. Bonds will be sold, and there'll be a bond oversight committee to monitor the process throughout. Another new strategy is align resources with needs, and the focus here will be on the budget process used for state comp ed and Title I funds. And they will also adopt a legislative agenda. I think the work on that is probably quite far along. But also establish a system to share budget cost information along with academic information and data on program effectiveness to help align information on both of those pieces together to help with budgeting. And they'll also research methods to track program and cost within the data warehouse, hoping that maybe that would be a viable opportunity to be able to track programs. And then the other new strategy in facilities is maintaining facilities, and This area will focus on looking at custodial functions and maintenance functions for quality, staffing efficiency, resources, resource allocation and training. And consultants will be hired to review these areas, and then the district will develop a plan to implement recommendations from those studies. They'll also be developing training programs for maintenance staff to address customer service skills, and there'll be a focus on energy efficiency improvements there through several initiatives. Safe and secure environment. They'll use survey results from this last spring from students and other groups as needed in terms of developing the campus and district improvement plans. And that process was put in place last year, so that is sort of a continuing activity. And then there'll be staff training on alignment of the new PBIS and the instructional model and response to intervention. So that's a major initiative. In terms of effective instruction in the area of professional development, there'll be an in-depth needs assessment process where they'll look at teacher perceptions and assessing quality of professional development against standards. And then they'll use that information to develop and recommend a plan for professional learning in the district. Teacher rules and teacher tools and resources. They will be working on providing teachers with resources in the areas of unpacking the TEKS, the TEKS and standards, providing sample assessment items so that they can measure student mastery of standards, and the use of campus-based CBAs or academic checks. And they'll also use a needs assessment process and a trend analysis to look at the curriculum areas that need to be addressed. So that'll be more of a long-range project looking at what needs to be addressed now and into the future. And then, as mentioned earlier, they'll be implementing the second grade standards-based report card this year. In terms of leadership, recruit and retain the most effective people. This is the performance pay and new appraisal system. So this has been in the plan before, but it got put on hold because of the actions of the state level. So this is scheduled to be done this year. And so after that study has been done and the development work has been done, then after that's completed and it's received all the approvals, then the work will be to communicate that information to all the campuses, because it'll be a highly sensitive and important development in terms of a new process. And then a complete staff development for the people who will be involved in appraisals. Okay, another one that's combined here is selection, retention, and then leadership pipeline. Scott and his group will work to put together a comprehensive recognition system for employees that's based on performance. So it'll be a separate recognition system outside that whole performance pay issue. And they will be developing the framework for a leadership pipeline. They'll do some additional work on validating the teacher screener instrument that's been in place using appraisal information from this past year with a teacher screener information from the beginning before the year started. And they'll be developing a succession plan for campus and central office administrators and implementing a digital interview software to help improve efficiency and accuracy in staff selection. Customer service and positive working culture. The employee engagement process will be continued this next year. That cycle, where they survey staff, develop a 90-day plan, evaluate, survey again, and so forth. So that'll be continued in this year. We'll continue to collect the survey everyone, the parents and students and graduating seniors. and then use the district services survey process. So really there's not new things here, but these processes will be in place for the second full year. In terms of the goal of respect, integrity, wellness, and citizenship, one of the new strategies is service learning. And in this area, they will begin the work of inventorying what is currently in place in terms of service learning, and then explore what could be added or modified, and basically build a framework of how that can be, the service learning concept can be expanded in the district. In terms of culture of integrity, there will be work to develop a district value statement as a standard of consistent individual behavior, and that will be developed through a collaborative process with input from all levels. And then this value statement will be communicated to staff and be reinforced through accountability and rewards. Wellness program, this is also a new strategy for this year. They'll be researching comprehensive wellness programs and then developing, communicating, and implementing an initiative for staff this year, and then promote regular physical activity and health awareness for staff. Leadership and training, of course, the emerging program, the new leader program, will be in place with its 35 participants. There'll be additional training on the district scorecard and that process, providing training both to senior leadership and campus principals, and especially on the new components of the district scorecard. As was mentioned earlier, the scorecard will be monitored every 6 weeks to ensure that everybody's on track and monitoring progress. And they'll establish a leadership development program for campus department leaders and level leaders. So a new couple of new groups to be added in terms of leadership development. In the community, parent and family, they're going to work to further enhance the parent university system, not only those days, those parent university days, but also including online videos and online courses for parents. And that system will allow parents to actually obtain a transcript of the kinds of work, training that they receive, and they will be able to evaluate the training and give feedback. They'll have 3 full-day parent universities sessions this year rather than the 2 that we started with this past year. And he'll also work with principals to include those family engagement activities in their campus plans. Okay. And then the community engagement, looking at implementing and evaluating a comprehensive volunteer program. I think there's a lot of aspects of that that they will be addressing, some new aspects of the volunteer program. Also developing a community partnership program so that you match partners with needs in the district. And so it'll be a more formalized thing, process where they'll have guidelines and protocols for participation and how those partnerships work and recognizing those partnerships. And then continuing the meetings that they facilitate between the superintendent and community groups, so that those groups have an opportunity to not only learn more about the district, but to share feedback with the superintendent. And then the last goal is awareness and support of the district, engage stakeholders in the strategic plan process. Of course, all the products that we currently have in terms of the quarterly reviews and annual reports, but also the planning process for the next district long-range plan. And then continuing to elicit input from stakeholders in terms of implementing the current plan and design of the new plan. In terms of communication, There'll be a communications audit this year. This has been planned in the past, but it will actually be conducted this year. And those findings will be used to be able to refine and modify, develop new communication tools. And then they'll continue to develop and implement and market distinctive programs and offerings of the district. Okay. So what happens here is each quarter we'll continue to have staff update their plans, report on the implementation, and then we'll provide quarterly reports to you.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Hogg. Elaine, thank you. It's great stuff. Very excited to see the new things and the existing things, what we're doing. I'd say we're still doing pretty good, keeping all those things moving, huh? I did have a question on the goal of respect, integrity, wellness, and citizenship. It's under the category of, I think, effective leadership. Yeah. And I know as part of the strategic plan, I haven't looked at the matrix to pinpoint it, but I know that we had that in mind for our students as well. And are any of those covered for the next year going forward? Are we working, have we had those in this year too? That's one question. The second one related to the effective leaders, I didn't see anything related to respect or citizenship. And I think that more respect I see both for our students and our staff and faculty. Citizenship, I guess I could see both, but in my mind, I think more of our students are learners. So I don't know if you can answer that or you can address that.
I'll address the first question on the student part for the respect and integrity and wellness. The wellness is more our health initiatives and that big partnership with Fuel Up to Play 60 and Dairy Max, et cetera. Every campus participates in that. The integrity and citizenship deals more with our PBIS implementation, where we talk about respect, responsibility, and readiness. Okay. And so that's how that's integrated to this year in particular for our students.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so did that cover it or did we miss part?
Respect and citizenship for our leaders.
So in terms of leadership, and I don't know if you're going to address that or?
Well, remember in the presentation there was discussion of a value statement.
Yep.
And I think that will address the respect and
so besides integrity,
culture,
it'll
yeah.
encompass
right.
the whole thing.
I think that is the intent of that area.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Reich, and I think you're right, because we talked about, when we talked about wellness for staff, I think it also included, as we talked, of if you can reduce asthma with students, you reduce absences. It's very proven. It's one of the most common reasons students miss. So if you can educate them more. So I agree. We have to incorporate in. We're starting with the wellness on some of our staff, but as we start going and develop that more, and I don't think that's all a function of HR, it started spreading out to other departments within wellness for other divisions within there. So I think it's a good point.
Well, and that's the case. We've got wellness programs within our district with JPS and
That's right.
Insights, and so we're been going down that road for a long time.
And I think it's formalizing and putting a little more together. And as we talked, some of the wellness of those students, some of JPS, also of programs such as, what are we doing to increase food offerings for students, things of that nature, which are being requested by students out there. So you're right, Mr. Hibbs. We've done a lot of little pieces here and there. I think now it's like, how do we bring it all together and make sure it fits together? Mr. Barron.
Thank you, President Hogg. Thank you, Ms. Say. I have a question on MPE. Is it the principal or the school that's MPE'd?
It's both actually, but it's a leadership development as well as an autonomy for the school, but mostly leadership development. So the principal requests the autonomies, but they work with their staff to come up with those autonomy requests and things like that. This year, we're looking at asking upfront. You know, we're learning through this process, and we had the first year. This coming year is to ask upfront for the principal to submit ideas of the autonomies they want to request versus waiting for the year to go and then they think of one. So try to plan a little bit more ahead.
Okay, so I guess my question is, if last year we had a principal who was MPE'd and that principal retired or left, does the incoming principal achieve MPEdom?
You know, as part of our as part of our guidelines that we structured for MPE, if the principal, if there was a leadership vacancy or whatever, then the campus would not continue in MPE. Now, the flip side of that is, if for some reason they did not meet the standard for MPE, the way we structured it was that it would last for 2 years. So even if you didn't meet the standard this year, but you met it last year and you were MPE, it lasts for 1 more year. But if the principal was promoted or applied for another job, or there was a vacancy or something, then they would not be MPE.
Okay, so could we get a list then of the MPE schools for the coming year?
And we're still processing that. There's a little debate as to the standards on that, because as we continue to refine the standards, what are those things that are most indicators of the success? And so Dr. Link is working right now to kind of put all those differences and kind of debates into a structure, and then we'll be ready to announce that in maybe a couple of weeks.
Okay. My next question is on dual credit. We talk about dual credit all the time. Can we get a summary of dual credit courses taken versus or along with credits earned to see how effective we really are in the dual credit category?
So would you be like, are you talking about maybe the
college credits
but
issue?
The students that
Right.
take dual credit, do they actually pass?
You do actually get the credit from the college.
Right. And so our passing rates on dual credit are in the mid to high 90s, I think. That's just in general, but we can get a good number.
Compared to, say, AP courses where a lot of students take the AP course, but not everybody takes the AP exam.
That's correct. That's
or
correct.
passes the AP exam, let's say.
In the dual credit course, if you're in the dual credit course and you pass the course, you obtain the dual credit,
Okay.
the college credit. Obviously, if you don't pass the course, then you don't get the credit or the grade.
Okay. I like the whole leadership development concept that we're embracing. That will lead us to contingency planning and continuity planning so that everybody will have a successor somewhere.
That's correct. And there's a very scientific and also combined with an art, but mostly scientific way of developing succession plans. And Scott Kell and I have been visiting about that with others about the even the software programs and things like that, to make sure that we're very intentional about succession planning, but also that we provide the right resources where there are gaps and things like that. So that's coming.
Last one. Leadership Academy, do we have people from outside the district to apply and try to go to that? Or is it strictly for our people?
Strictly for AISD employees.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Pena.
Mine's more of a comment. I think one of the wonderful things that the strategic plan has done for us is that there have been programs throughout the district that were available at different campuses, but one campus would not know about what the other campus was doing. And in this process with the strategic plan, it's allowed us to get the bigger picture and share all the wealth, so to speak. So one of the things I've seen is that it's really made us stronger in the sense that before we would do things and no one knew we were doing them. And everybody would say, well, why don't you make this more public, and why don't you make this more transparent? Because the citizens don't know what's available in AISD. But the strategic plan has allowed us to make it more visible and strengthen that bond between us and the community. So I think this is great. The tracking mechanisms, the reporting out, the sharing of information throughout the district, it can only take us in a better direction.
And Ms. Pena, all three of our teacher organizations, ATPE, UEA, and TSTA, are sitting out there to relay information to all your members, correct? They're nodding their head tired because it's work week. We understand that. No, thank you all for being here tonight. Ms. Mays. You can't turn it off, Ms. Mays. You've got to ask a question. No, I'm just kidding. You don't really have. Once you push a button, Ms. Mays, you're stuck. And you, even if your question's been asked, you have to go again. So, no, I'm kidding.
I had a question, but I think I already know the answer. But I'll go ahead and answer
No,
since I
don't.
can't turn my things off. On the instructional model that we're continuing with the pilot schools, are these the initial schools that we started the pilot program in, or have we added additional schools?
I think we've added additional.
We have added
schools.
additional and even reconsidered some. In some cases, we continue to evaluate that based on leadership changes and things like that. Conditions change, but I think Renee is finalizing that and is ready to start this year. But there's been some kind of last-minute additions because of interest or because of capacity or things like that.
Okay, well, I'm glad I did ask that question. And then my one last question, we're talking about the strategies that we've done and that we're continuing to do and the measures of how we're doing them. Are there any strategies that we have where maybe we're having some problems reaching those goals for those strategies, or?
The outcomes that the district has designated at the beginning of the process, the measures, as we call them, we say that there's 28, but actually some of them have lots of parts, so there's beyond 28 measures. Those measures were selected because they provide sort of the big umbrella and try to encompass all of the strategies and the activities. But there's not a one-to-one correspondence of this outcome matches this particular strategy. So the measures really address, hopefully, across strategies.
If I can add that there are some strategies that we've adjusted timelines based on conditions and context that occurs, obviously, during the time we're implementing that wasn't there at the beginning of our plan. A good one is performance pay. And we were going to do the RFP last year, and then the state changed the evaluation timeline of teachers and things like that. And so we delayed that a year, and there were other things, salary market studies. So we have adjusted some things, if that helps clarify a little bit.
So adjustments for strategy. So I guess the bottom line that I'm trying to get to is it sounds like the strategies that were put together in the strategic plan were all very obtainable and very measurable. So to me, that's just confirmation of the strategic plan. Thank you.
See, Ms. Mays, aren't you glad your button was lit up? Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Hogg. I just wanted to add on to Mr. Barron's comments regarding the MPE situations. Being on the leading edge and not having experienced certain things before, this will be kind of a test for you, Dr. Cavazos, and your team for those campuses that the principals have been promoted or left, to see what things that not necessarily were autonomies, but effective practices that might have led to that MPE status, what worked, what should stay in place. And I know that was a discussion we had when we first announced those initial 10 campuses, is what if, what happens, and now we're faced with that, and that's not necessarily a bad problem, but it is something that we'll look forward to hearing how you tackle that moving forward.
Thank you. And that's part of, I can't help it, but that's part of the task, in particular the two principals, for example, today. Their task is to inform the incoming interim and then principal about what works and what continues and what systems are in place and things like that. Our area superintendents are very much in tune with that to make sure that that capacity is not lost because the leader moves through the school.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Ms. Say, let me just say, never mind, we'll leave it. It's after 10 o'clock. We're always glad when you're here because you give us hope that our strategic plan that we spent a lot of time developing and everyone puts a lot of energy to is being executed. It's being executed efficiently, and it's making the district better. And your reports that come back to us are uplifting even when it's late in the evening, that we're doing things correctly and moving forward with progress. So I thank you so much for your time and all your work. We'll see you in 2 weeks. If you need to, we can rent you a room or something around here, I think. So you're probably you're up here enough. I mean, we should just start charging rent to some of our assistants with us. So with that, we'll move on to open forum for non-agenda items. I have no cards for the evening. And Dr. Cavazos will move into superintendent reports.
Thank you, President Hogg. And last Monday, it seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't. Last Monday, we had our State of the District address. And we had a sold-out crowd, and we added a table or two to make sure we accommodate as many people as we could. Bowie Hogg and I spoke about the accomplishments of the district. We had, as I mentioned there, we had more content than we had time, and that's because of the dedication and the work that the board and staff and everyone has done. I appreciate the partnerships with our community, their support, and their validation of that our work is important and meaningful to all of Arlington. So that was the State of the District. We had 146 summer graduates last week at Texas Hall at UT Arlington. We celebrated summer graduation, and these students were persistent about pursuing their high school diploma. And also in this group were students who accelerated and completed their high school diploma in 3 years. So it's a good combination, good mix. For those students that were persistent, the message to them was that they never gave up, and they made sure that they continued to reach for their goals, and in this case of graduating from high school. So we're very proud of our students for that participated in summer graduation. Again, our community has stepped up to help our students with back-to-school preparations. Last weekend, we had the Arlington chapter of the NAACP, along with the Arlington Police Department and Council Member Robert Rivera, as the Junior League also hosted a back-to-school fair where students receive free school supplies, backpacks, vaccinations, haircuts, and so much more. Academic Partnerships donated 100 backpacks with supplies for Ellis and Sherrod students. Our students are very fortunate to have a community that's so generous, and we were able to participate in that and see the generosity of our community, and we thank them so much. We have a couple more back-to-school fairs coming up before school, I think this weekend as well, so thank you ahead of time for that too. I want to congratulate our Arlington High School IB coordinator, Brenda Gilmore, after she received and learned that she will be awarded the Pat Kirshner Award by the Texas Association of Student Councils. Ms. Gilmore is receiving this award for outstanding contributions to that Association of Student Council, in particular to the Summer Leadership Workshop. In order to even be nominated, the recipient has had to have served for 10 years or more as their Summer Workshop Director or Consultant. Ms. Gilmore went way beyond that, serving as Student Council Advisor for 35 years and Leadership Workshop Consultant for 25 years. Congratulations to Brenda Gilmore from Arlington High School.
And Dr. Crosso, she put up with me and her student council.
Yeah.
So if she could make it through that, and I went to summer leadership with her, so it's she can make it through that, she should have even given an award.
Right. And last but not least, Wednesday morning we had a very successful convocation at College Park at UTA. I know our employees were energized and excited, and I want to thank all the participants at convocation that helped us not only set up and prepare and plan, but also helped us with the implementation of that. And thanks all the staff for being energized and ready to go back to school. That concludes my report.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. And we know you just have a couple things going on with the start of school right now. It's almost a joke what your schedule looks like. So we'll move on to board reports. Mr. Hips.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg, and thank you, Dr. Cavazos. I appreciate the efforts and work that you put in this summer. It was a busy summer for the entire staff with the bond and staffing, doing a lot of different things. And usually it's July is an enjoyable month to take a lot of time off, and I know you didn't get to do that because you were traveling to Boston, to Harvard. You were my fellow board member, Ms. Mays, traveled to New Mexico for additional training. This entire board worked and did a number of trainings over the summer. So I appreciate their dedication. My point of really, and I'm glad that we've got our teacher groups here. We've got a lot of campuses that teachers are going to be going back to, students will be going back to with new principals and assistant principals, because a lot of principals retired. Some took opportunities for advancement even in other places. We've got new principals coming in. It's my encouragement, because it's always hard to get used to somebody new until you give them a chance. It's my encouragement that teachers, I encourage you to give your principals an opportunity, give them that extended hand to be successful. Principals, I've said this before, reach out to your teachers, because they're the wealth of knowledge. They can make your job easy. And from an administrative standpoint, from a board, we just want our community to know that we're open and receptive, and we want this to be a successful year for our kids. So on that note, let's have a great year.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Dr. Resch.
Thank you, President Hogg. Yeah, in the past week and a half, we've been around a lot of places. I'll have to echo was pretty much everything that Dr. Cavasso stated. I think most of us were. Encouraging to see lots of excited kids at the back-to-school fairs. Have to echo the thanks to Robert Rivera, Councilman Rivera, and NAACP, and also the Junior League for their efforts and what they did. It was fantastic. I will have to also say Ms. Mays spoke for a little bit at the SAM Back to School event, and you did a great job. It was very, very well done. She had the students and the parents make commitments to goals and pledges, and or made pledges for goals and commitments for the year. And it was very nice. It was inspiring. So great job there, Keisha. We have many back-to-school luncheons going on with our wonderful PTAs around the district, welcoming our teachers back and giving them just a little bit of food and door prizes and raffles. I was able to help at Lamar's, and Nichols, myself, Mr. Barron, Ms. Sullins were there. Ms. Sullins was kind enough to slap an apron on me to go help make hot dogs. It was great to see all the energy, the positive energies of the students and the families. Really an upbeat feeling is what I'm getting. Two final things. The Commissioner's office, Commissioner Wynn invited me to come speak at his town hall that he had last night, actually, to help describe and highlight our district partnership that we have with Tarrant County Juvenile Justice System, the truancy prevention, our on-time, at school, on-time, everyday program, our grant. And everybody that heard about that was very intrigued, and we are breaking a mold there. So it'll be great to see what our outcomes data is with that. So hats off to Brian Harris and Celia Nichols and Aaron Perales for heading all that up on the district side. And just a final note, related to our bond, just to put it out there for the 2 or 3 people that might be listening to this online, our CBOC application process is open. The app is open online until September 5th. So please take a moment to consider being part of that committee and apply, or tell somebody that you think would be good to apply for that committee, because we'll be coming back as a community engagement committee making recommendations for this board to consider at our next meeting. So we won't have another opportunity to announce that. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Ms. Pena.
I agree with Dr. Reich. Most of us attended the things that Dr. Cavazos attended. There was an event, the new teacher orientation, that Dr. Cavazos and Mr. Barron and I attended, and the new teachers that were there who have no experience, they call them the veteran teachers that had 1 year experience, and then the new teachers who had no experience. And those new teachers, they looked like babies. They were so young. I thought, oh my goodness, they look like babies. I think I even said that to whoever was speaking, sitting next to me. In addition to that, John, Jamie, staff, and I had a budget and finance teleconference. We seem to have had a few of those. And thanks to all the staff for all the hard work they did to make those, gather the information that we needed. Also, I attended the 13th Annual Asian Business Expo Award Luncheon, in which they set up information booths around the Arlington Convention Center, and AISD had a booth there. So I had the opportunity to sit with Tony Drollinger and Javier Fernandez at the luncheon, and it was a very nice event. I recommend it to the rest of the board that you attend that. It's a lot of information if you come early, because I walked around the different booths that they had to see what they had to offer. And a lot of them, because my name tag reflected that I was Arlington ISD, would tell me, well, we have business with you. We have business. So they were authorized vendors, and, you know, I was thinking, okay, I'm not taking anything from their table, you know, because they have gifts they want to give you. And I said, okay, nothing from your table. Thank you very much. The other thing I want to end this with is every year I buy school supplies. And I have a daughter who will be 25 tomorrow, so it's definitely not for her. And what I typically try to do is, not all our schools have PTAs, and so they don't get some of the support that the PTAs would provide to them. So I try to find a school that doesn't have a PTA, and I donate the supplies to that school. So I haven't heard from a school yet. Okay, I see someone in the crowd.
Spear Elementary would love to have your donation.
Okay, great. Spear Elementary it is. Spear will get the supplies that I have purchased, and I will get them off my dining room table. So thank you very much, because I like to do this every year, and if I hear from a school specifically, then I go, and I don't know, I have this thing about school supplies. I like buying them. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you in a little bit. All right, bye.
Mr. Barron.
It's a sickness. My wife has the same issue, you know, buying school supplies. Okay.
I think they have programs for that. I don't know where they meet.
It's like a 7-step program.
School Supply Anonymous, but it's bound to be somewhere, so.
I've got 3 boys.
Okay, summer graduation. Well, this shows that the kids can be persistent and graduate. And I have to point out that there were several students who were graduating with 3 years and on the distinguished plan. So they did the extra math, the extra foreign language. It's just so impressive to watch these kids go across the stage. New teacher orientation. How many new teachers were there?
Approximately 400, 350 to 400. Yeah.
400. The Robert Rivera NAACP back-to-school event at Sam Houston was pretty good. It's just a joy to watch the smile on the kids when they get their backpacks. It's like Christmas. And the same thing at the Junior League at the Hugh Smith Center, where they were getting haircuts and shots, right? And the dentist and eye checks and free glasses from the Lions Club. Very impressive. And at Nichols the other night, I didn't get to cook hot dogs, but I did eat one. It was very good. A young lady came up to me and asked me if I had taught at Arlington High School, and I said, yeah. And she said, you were my teacher, and it was 1997. She had 2 boys in 7th grade. I felt so old. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then, of course, ended up with convocation the other day, was just great. It's so good to see all the teachers there in their team shirts and having a good time before Monday hits. That's all.
Good job, Mr. Barron. What we're doing next is we're going to ask the secretary if there's any items we need to cover.
No.
It's 10:17. With that, having no other items, I think we have an ice bucket challenge that someone gets to accomplish. Nothing like a little freezing cold water at 10:15 to wake you up. See, and Spear Elementary got some school supplies. School board's meetings, a gift that keeps on giving. And at 10:17, we're adjourned.